On behalf of the members of the Planning Board and our professionals, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's meeting of the Sparta Township Planning Board. This meeting is being held on March 19th, 2025, at the Sparta Township Municipal Building located at 65 Main Street, Sparta. Proceedings of the meeting are being live streamed on YouTube at www.youtube.com/@SpartaTWP. The time is now 7:05, and this meeting is called to order. Please note that no new business will be conducted after 9:30 p.m., and the meeting will end at 10. Please stand and join me as we proudly pledge our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. There are a couple things on the agenda that we're going to be taking out of order. Our attorney is running late, so we're going to be starting with the updates for town council and the various subcommittees. But before we do that, I guess we have to do roll call.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I'll tell you the other two things we're taking out of order. Go ahead.
Jeanette Burke.
Here.
Bernie Reichstad.
Here.
Brian Zimmerman.
Here.
Ron Day.
Here.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Here.
Councilman Mark Scott.
Here.
Robert Bleakley.
Here.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto.
Here.
Les Luciano.
Here.
Chris Dunbar.
Okay. So before we even go to that, I want to take one of the resolutions, and we'll go back to the others later, but I would like to take the resolution, which is appointing Lindsay Knight as our new planner, just so we can get that business out of the way before we, begin with everything. So you have the resolution in your packet. It is Resolution 2025-8 to appoint Lindsay Knight of Neglia as the Planning Board planner.
I'll make a motion to approve Lindsay Knight as the planning board planner.
Okay, roll call, please.
Jeanette Burke.
Yes.
Excuse me. Bernie Reichstad.
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman.
Yes.
Ron Day.
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott.
Yeah.
Robert Bleakley.
Yes.
And Vice Chairman Robert Otto.
Yes.
I'm just going to see, Mark, if I can make you a little bit louder.
Sure you want to do that?
I don't think anybody can, you can't hear him, can you? You can? Oh, okay. Like down there. Okay. So welcome, Lindsay. We're happy to have you on board, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
The other thing that I will take out of order later is the public hearing. We'd like to hear Paracella first, followed by Rames. Okay, we'll move on to the updates. And Mark, if you wouldn't mind, if you can start giving us the update from the town council?
Sure. At the last town council meeting, the town council considered the retail cannabis resolution, and that's obviously what we're talking about tonight here. And the vote on this, which I believe will be well attended, is April 8th at 7 p.m. And so that'll be coming up. Also, the film committee was formed and approved. And so hopefully we'll be bringing films to Sparta soon. We've got a really great committee of some really talented young people. And I think that it's going to pay off for Sparta in the long term here. And that's pretty much my report. Thank you.
All right, terrific, thank you. Rob, Environmental Council?
We had a speaker, Lisa Chiarello from Rutgers, who went over plant this, not that. So native plantings, non-invasives. Then we kind of got sidetracked a little bit about a member of the public who had been at a previous meeting. So we kind of were talking about what do the deer don't like, and what could we plant that will be there the next morning. So that was kind of interesting. I don't have any magic answers for you guys, but then it kind of got into I think we're going to be asking council to consider, there's a free program with the DEP where we can look at deer management options and potentially a cull. So that will be coming. We didn't have any applications. We're still working on Earth Day celebration, more speakers. I know Margie Murphy is working on the Sustainable New Jersey Land Use Pledge to bring that forward to town council. We talked a little bit about Salt Watch, and then we had a ordinance review a little bit, which is just kind of a lighting, dark sky type exercise to just see what environmental could do to kind of streamline the process for applications and help do some of the heavy lifting as applications come before planning, zoning. So, yeah, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Would you follow up with the minor site plan subcommittee?
Oh. Well, I don't know how detailed getting there. I mean, we considered some signs and we got through a lot. I think we finally got caught up, and I'm catching up because I'm now chairing that committee. So if there's anyone on this committee that would be interested in learning a lot about design guidelines and zone, by zone restrictions, I would say, consider joining minor site plan subcommittee. I think we have one person that might be looking to vacate a seat, and we'd love to have you. We typically would meet 1 hour prior to this meeting. Otherwise, we kind of get stuff done over email. So just, think about that. Any of you guys on planning,
Raise your
please.
hands. Be reaching out. In the minutes? Just that they were approved.
Yeah, I'm just looking for my copy of that. Sorry. What, you just want me to go through all the various properties? So for February, we referred, like how detailed? Yeah, I mean, we referred several,
Great.
smoke shop to planning board, right? I mean, okay, and restaurant, we're referring to planning board for some considerations. We're looking at some properties. There's been some turnover in White Deer Plaza, and so we're just trying to kind of claw back the guidelines that we have for that area since it's a historic area. So we've approved some new tenants there, two new signs there for new tenants, and we referred another property to the zoning department for approval. And then, yeah, we're still trying to figure out one of them. One of the uses, we need a little more clarification. So,
The February minutes were.
oh yeah, so the February minutes were approved and they're in our packets. And what's that?
They'll go out with the minutes.
Yeah, so they'll go out with the minutes. So we just today got those together and approved them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The master plan subcommittee met March 6th, the first Thursday in March. And we pretty much rolled up our sleeves and got down to work looking at the tremendous amount of responses that we had to the open-ended questions. There were over 1,000 responses to each one of the questions. So each member took one of the responses and went through all of the 1,000 some odd ones and looked for basic themes and then ranked them in terms of what was highest in priority and highlighted it. So we're getting that together, and at our next meeting, we will be looking at the survey and then trying to make a recommendation as to how we want to go about distributing that to the larger community. So we are well on our way to doing that now, and Lindsay is going to be working with us with the master plan, and Dave, of course, is always, helping. So we will, we're moving forward now, and we do have some funding, so we're going to figure out the best way to use that funding as we go ahead. So that's it for the updates. Why don't can we do resolutions without an attorney?
Do the
Yeah, let's
minutes
do
first.
resolutions.
I think you should do the minutes first because he doesn't have to have
Okay,
any comment on that.
good. We'll go back to the minutes. I actually did have a question for him on the minutes. Let's do resolutions. Okay, we have Resolution 2025-9, PB number 24725, NPS Property Holdings at 9 Park Lake Road, which is in the ED zone. Resolution was sent to everybody, and that is also in your packets. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolutions 2025-9.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Jeanette Burke? Yes. Ron Day?
Yes.
Robert Blakely?
Yes.
Celeste Luciano?
Yes.
Ernie Reichstad?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rob Otto?
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Okay, the next one is 2025-10, PB 686, Collinear Machine and Design at 11 Wilson Drive, also in the ED zone. Somebody make a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Roll call?
Ernie Reichstad?
Yes.
Robert Blakely?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rob Otto?
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes.
Ron Day?
Yes.
Jeanette Burke? Yes. Celeste Luciano?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, I guess we'll do minutes, and I'm going to hold my question till the next time. We have the February 5th, 2025 minutes. Your motion to approve?
Mm.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll.
Who is that, Ron?
Yes.
Thank you, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we have the February 19th, 2025. Motion to approve.
I'll make it.
Okay, that was with Ernie. Second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, March 5th, 2025. A motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second? Okay.
And,
all in-
point of discussion if I can. Just one minor change is, I think it's important that the records show that, when the application was discussed, that Ernie and I recused ourselves from there.
I will make that.
All in favor with that change? Say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Well, we're going through a lot of stuff. Can we do the Sussex, County of Sussex State Plan Cross Acceptance? And I'm going to defer to Lindsay on that, but no buts, I'll just defer.
So the state has come out with a new redevelopment plan. Sparta is unique in the sense that a decision has to be made by mayor and council to determine whether Sparta will be represented by Highlands Council or by Sussex County. The state development redevelopment plan basically has asked each municipality to look through the state development redevelopment plan and determine if there are any consistencies with what is written in the plan, as well as their mapping, and then what is written within the townships, zoning ordinances, master plans, zoning maps, any kind of governing document. Right now, there is, at this time, we have not found any inconsistencies. I'll be putting together a memo to just kind of clarify if there are any additional things that should be brought to our attention. But on a first look, we did not find anything that was inconsistent. However, I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dig and fine tune a memo for you all just to determine if anything should be changed. There's a meeting on, I believe, the 28th, where the public is welcome to come out and voice anything that, any concerns, anything they approve of, and that's an opportunity to speak about the plan.
Thank you. So that's really, I guess, just for all of our information that this process is taking place, and it is up to the town council to decide.
I did have one question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between being represented by the Highlands Council or the County of Sussex? Because we have that option.
Well, I think we're automatically represented by the Highlands because
Unless we
are in
request to have the
yeah,
county
unless
be
we
our
request it.
representative.
And I guess that's really up to town council to make that decision.
And I think that decision had to be made by the 15th, so do we know if that was made or?
not.
It was not, okay.
So that might automatically then put
Defer
us with
to
the Highlands, unless they accept something late. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unclear if they would accept anything late, the county. That would take further correspondence with them. And then also just the Highlands Council representation doesn't matter if you're compliant or not.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I was hoping Ken would be here for this one, but we'll keep moving on for bylaws. Just really wanted to bring that to your attention. I know as a new member and still learning, I always look for some answers, and I found the site for the Livingston that has the bylaws, and they're actually, very beneficial to look at. They outline everything. They give you the general rules, they go into details. And so I wanted you at least to take a look at it, and Dory had worked for Chester Township. She shared those as well, so we have 2 sets here. There are plenty more out there, but it was just to give you an idea of what is in bylaws, and I'd like to make, the recommendation that we also adopt bylaws for our board. I think it will, help everybody, and particularly if you're new. And even if you're not, and it's also available for the public to see, and everybody will begin to understand the process a little bit better. So we'd like to take a stab at that, bring it back to you, and, see if we can get that approved. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, have any comments, suggestions. I just wanted to put it out there.
So is the intent to maybe go forward and put together a set of bylaws? And do we know that we don't have bylaws? I mean, I was
Yeah,
surprised.
We don't. Most towns do.
Yeah, because I know that came up once before, and it was kind of left that we have them, we just got to find them, but they're out there.
Well, we
So
haven't
which
found them
kinda
in
says that they're
40-something
not
years,
there.
so
Okay,
I don't know where they are.
Or there's nothing in the township manual?
We do not have bylaws for the board
We do-
specifically.
Okay.
Is there a reason, just oversight, or?
I don't know.
I'm just curious
I'll
if there
defer to the
maybe a
old- the bo-
purpose.
The people who've been here longer,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there were not bylaws from the moment I took the original seat. Debbie Card had said that there were no bylaws. Diana, our previous secretary, she wasn't able to find anything on record. They were hoping that there was something that, predated COVID, but yeah, there was nothing.
All right, so I'd just like to move forward with this and put it out there for us. We can make it specific to Sparta. I mean, a lot of this is general, but it depends on the town. Some go into it a little more specifically, and so we'll do like a first draft, and then if you want to add anything or you have any suggestions, feel free, and we'll put it together. Okay. All right, thank you. Well, there's only one more thing we can do before the public hearing, and that would be the master plan consistency review for the cannabis. So I'm going to look to Lindsay to lead that discussion as well.
So this is a unique kind of consistency review, seeing as the legislation was recently changed. The sale of marijuana for medicinal purposes was approved in 2010, for recreational purposes in 2021. So many of the former planning documents don't address this particular use. So we went through kind of the zone and anything that related back to a retail use or anything back to the zone, and kind of any kind of consistency. One kind of theme across the board that was represented from 1984 comprehensive plan forward was to safeguard the tax base, preserve economic balance, and provide for a continuing source of employment and tax ratables through appropriate use of existing and potential non-residential land. So this was just an additional retailer, would just add a rateable within the township. All of this is very surface level in the way that it could potentially be consistent with the master plan. The 1997 Town Center Master Plan amendment goals established a balance of land use appropriately distributed based on an identified need. This ordinance does have a cap of 2 retailers in the township, and it also has, which I'll touch on in the next piece, it does have parameters of keeping distances from other businesses that would be seem to be inappropriate to be located nearby. So that goes to the 2000 Master Plan Reexamination Report, which is examine the economic and commercial zones to provide for a cluster provision for open space opportunities and buffers between land use designations. So this ordinance does have buffers, which is keeping from this use from things like rec, youth centers, schools, daycares, parks, playgrounds, similar uses like that, churches. And then finally, the 2002 amendments to the master plan goals and objectives, once again, went back to kind of a fiscal responsibility of balancing the managing of residential and commercial growth. So I added the note about the state taxes that are put out by the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. So there is a high tax value on this type of retail. And the subsequent reexamination report since 2002 kind of agreed with the previous goals and objectives of previous plans, but the most recent plan did not specifically touch upon the use of recreational marijuana.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open it to the board at this point to ask any questions. Celeste, I want to start down with you.
So Lindsay, based on the fact that this is all new, and obviously the law wasn't really there previously, and any reexaminations or whatever that were done don't really specifically speak to cannabis. But in your professional view, do you feel that this does or does not align with what we have currently?
So a lot of part of the reexamination report, just kind of from a statutory criteria standpoint, a lot of the reexamination reports, you have to reflect on changes that have happened at the state level. So things like EV charging, those things get contemplated in the new reexamination reports. I did not see it contemplated in your most recent reexamination report. So I don't think it's something maybe that was contemplated. When I do see these types of ordinances, they do typically have buffers, distances, specifically in more residential oriented municipalities, do have these buffers where they do want to keep these businesses away from certain other uses within the municipality.
Okay. So let me be more specific.
Sure.
So in your professional opinion, do you, if you were to say, yes, this does, or no, this does not align with current master plan values, where would you fall on your assessment?
I would say that it hasn't been included in this specific use, has not been directly identified. But by the same token, typically these plans are pretty generic and don't always specify specific uses.
Okay.
But seeing in the most recent reexamination, it did go back to the, it did go back and look what happened between the previous reexamination report and this most current one. It does not state, does not even have a section addressing the change in legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Just to make clear, I know, Ron, you were bringing up this point too, that it is not our job to say that we are for or against this particular thing. We are just looking to see if it's consistent with the master plan. And if there, anybody wants to voice any personal comments, that would be at the town council meeting on April 8th. Okay? Mark is dying to say something here, so I'm going to let you go, Mark, and then
Joan,
we'll swing back.
Yes. Yes, Joan, thank you very much. I just wanted to, I don't know, comment or disagree possibly with the comment that this is a big revenue generator, big tax revenue generator for the town. Just last year, in 2024, revenues in New Jersey surpassed $1 billion. If you take 7.2 million adults living in New Jersey, that means the average person is smoking $138.90 a year of marijuana. Let's think about the demographics of Sparta versus maybe the rest of the state. So if $138 is being smoked by each person in Sparta, or $138 is being smoked by, everyone in Sparta, that would generate $2.80 in tax revenue per resident. So we have 17,100 adults in our town, times $2.80 per resident for a year's worth of smoking. That's $47,500. I am a little unclear as to exactly how bringing in $47,000 is going to exceed the additional policing, the changes in property values, the changes in the demeanor and the status of the town for $47,000. And so, while it may be bringing in some tax revenue, I think it's actually it's not that beneficial. I just want people to be aware of, we better start huffing and puffing if we're going to bring in this $2.80 per person in town. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
So are you suggesting that we strike that last bullet point, if you will, from this consistency review?
If that's possible, yes. And if the rest of the panel, the board agrees with me.
Well, it's not really a bullet, but the very last thing down there where it says maintain a sound fiscal balance by managing residential and commercial growth. Mark is saying that it's not going to bring in that type of revenue, therefore it may not be
Hey, Mark,
correlated.
Ken Porro speaking. I don't have any problem with leaving the language in with your reference to, what the economics are, but it is a generator. It does affect economics. So I would keep that in with the caveat of your analysis.
Okay, thank you.
May I just add something? I think it's important to source these numbers because if you look at the Cannabis Regulatory Commission of New Jersey, the official site, the numbers are in New Jersey $1 billion in 2024. So, obviously we have to figure out what these numbers, where they're coming from.
Okay, maybe that's something better at town council.
Yes.
Possibly, but
Maybe we'll take that up there.
My only point is that if we're bringing up numbers
No, not
here,
you. I'm
that
just
we
saying
should,
that
yeah.
this whole issue maybe would be better addressed on the 8th.
Yeah, Joan, could I add one more thing?
Sure.
That I just wanted to mention? I think the planning board, what we decide is that we're supposed to protect the citizens' health, safety, and welfare. And just in the past several weeks, several months, several major articles have come out about how there's a 25% increase in heart attacks, a 42% increase in the likelihood of stroke, using cannabis. So, I mean, I'm not so sure how this helps the health, safety, and welfare of our residents.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yeah.
To your point, we're not here to assess the validity of whether or not cannabis is a right thing to do or a wrong thing to do. Our sole goal here is to determine whether or not it is or is not in alignment with current master plan, currently aligned with the master plan that we have at this point in time. I think that those other issues are better left to the hearing at the council, because those are all hearing questions. Those are all, we're not hearing the hearing because we're not creating the law. We're just here for master plan consistency. I think if we stay on point, we'll be better suited to our time and the time of our,
Agreed. I think if we're gonna ask something directly that has to do with the master plan.
Yeah.
Is this use listed anywhere in our master plan? It's not. And I understand it's a new use, but there's a whole lot of old uses that are specifically not listed in our master plan because we don't want them here. So really, it should, I would think this is a use that should be in the master plan to have it be allowed as a new use. I don't think it's consistent for that reason.
Lindsay,
Yes.
does that term health, safety, and welfare appear anywhere in the master plan, the old master plan? Or any addendums to?
I didn't specifically look for that information when I did my consistency review. I kind of looked for the zones or anything related to certain uses, and like what was reiterated, I didn't find this specific use in any of the reports.
What I would say, Board, Ken Poro, for the record, that implied in all legislation is public health, safety, and welfare, and that it is, if it's not expressed, it's implied in your 1984, 1997, 2000, and 2002 master plan goals and objectives. It has to be in there by way of implied intent. However, cannabis is relatively new legislation, so therefore it would not have been contemplated in any of the historic documents. There is a presumption that if it's not stated that it's prohibited. I don't think that applies to the cannabis. It is a legal use. As mentioned, and I apologize for being late, this is referred to you under your power of the planning board. You can accept it, you can reject it, or take no action whatsoever. So it is here before you. You have the memorandum from Lindsay dated March 17, 2025 from Negley Engineering, where she went through her findings, and it's up to you to see whether or not you would like to find it consistent based upon the new legislation and law, and refer, again, take no action, make suggestions, or give an affirmance for or against. Thank you.
With that being said, may I make a suggestion with regard to the 2000 Master Plan Examination Report? And I guess we'll see. I don't know. I had some concerns about the buffers, where it started out at 500, 400, 300, 250, but now the 250 is door to door. So from my point of view as a planning board and the master plan, I would like to suggest that they take another look at those buffers, and then maybe it be from rather door to door, but between properties. Is that something that we can recommend?
Yes.
Thank you.
So to hop on that, yeah, I started looking at other ordinances just to kind of see how had other towns done it. I was curious. And buffer is something, the buffer zone was a question I had too. I didn't know the justification for 250 feet versus the 1,000 feet and the door to door as well. So I saw it, most typically I saw 1,000 feet property line to property line. And if you're considering the property lines in question, these sensitive areas, daycare, school, whatever, I mean, they're typically surrounded by fields. Kids will be on those. So door to door, I think, is a flawed way to measure. However it's measured, I don't think it should be door to door, because the uses of those areas that you're going to buffer from, they're not within the building, they're typically stretched out beyond to the extent of the property line. So that would be,
Yeah, exactly. I thought if you had a building and there was a daycare in the back and the rear yards were abutting and there was 50 feet between them, but you do door to door, you're going out the front door to the left, down the side, around the other side, and to the other door when it's still 50 feet. So that would just be my one recommendation in that. Anybody else?
I mean, I have more, but.
Yeah, Morica?
So the idea is ratables, Mark kind of covered that, I guess. As far, I think Ernie was talking about uses, so, and then we've talked about how this wasn't really contemplated, but there are prohibited uses that are in the current code. And I noticed that if you were to take a look at that, and this is not master plan, but again, it's within our code. So for those prohibited uses, at least one of them referred to a regional survey. So I guess a point there would be to the identified need. Is the need identified? Are we going off of the state vote results? And then the question, there might be people that voted to legalize or decriminalize, but perhaps hadn't envisioned that that would be the same as locating an establishment within a certain area. So I guess I'm curious if if the need has been demonstrated, and if there was any vote that showed that this need was, or that this ordinance was desired by the community.
I think that's a good question for town council.
Yeah, I was going to say that
All right,
that's
well-
definitely
Yeah.
a good question for the hearing because,
So, yeah,
But it's also with this,
True.
you know, it says.
I mean, I see it here.
Is
It's
an identified need?
Yeah.
I agree. It is an identified need.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just putting it out there, is I would like to see the identified need. Certainly, I agree that there's, to go any further into that, it's probably town council. But
Can we add a sentence to that? It says the ordinance has very specific requirements regarding location of the businesses and has a cap of 2 retailers in the township. Needs to be determined?
Yeah, we could write something specifying the demand.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
I have a question for Ken.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that this Class 5 license is also a license that is issued to those that want to open a consumption lounge. What would be the process, looking into the future, 5, 6, 7 years, for someone with a Class 5 dispensary for recreational marijuana to expand and or open another place that would actually be a consumption lounge? Would it be a use variance?
The municipality has very strong powers with regard to cannabis. The ordinance can set forth all types of limitations. They could even prohibit lounges if they wanted. If it was not permitted and cannabis is not permitted in that zone, I'm not 100% sure that they could even go for a use variance. I don't know that answer. Because it's regulated by the state, and let's say the Sparta says we'll allow 2 establishments. Then you have 2 establishments, you have the location, the buffers, and the like, and let's say then they want to expand that to permit a lounge. If the initial legislation does not permit that in the licensing, I'm not sure they could go before land use board to get approval. I think they'd have to go to the mayor and council to change the ordinance to get approval by the state cannabis division. So I think, feel comfortable that whatever the mayor and council's ordinance is, that will be strictly enforced.
But to your point, right now, the sale of cannabis isn't approved in our master plan or in any of our ordinances. It's not a permitted use. So we would be permitting a use that's not permitted in our plan by them going forward with this. You know, shouldn't, maybe the better way of doing this should be incorporated into the master plan before this is to go forward.
Well, in days of old, there was issues on adult entertainment. There was issues of other areas that municipalities put specific limitations. Let's say adult entertainment had First Amendment rights, so they utilized that in trying to get, let's say, use variances if it was contrary to the master plan, saying they have a constitutional right. Here, there's a legal right for cannabis. As the analysis, again, it's here for your review. It's an evolving area. It's so stringently regulated by the state of New Jersey that they do delegate to the municipalities as we discussed, the number of locations, restricting locations on the land use. So whether or not it is in compliant with the master plan, I think that Lindsay has properly identified the economic aspect of, and I know Scott gave his caution on that. Some on the identified need, some municipalities put out referendums in their municipality if they're for or against it. The borough of Rutherford and Bergen County did that. Maybe even Secaucus had done it at one point. So that is one, if the mayor and council chose to go that route, that's an option.
So is on-site consumption allowed currently under Class 5? No. But am I understanding that if we adopt this as a Class 5, a Class 5 is written by and controlled by the state? So if we approved a Class 5 and the state changed the rules, the language on that, would we then be subject to a use change?
No, my understanding is the Class 5 license that issued by the state is issued to consumption lounges as well as dispensaries that we're talking about
Okay.
now. I'm just wondering if at some point down the road, if we wanted to change that Class 5 from a dispensary to a consumption lounge.
Yeah.
What would the process be? I mean, they couldn't just do it. They had to go before, I'm guessing, the zoning board for use variance.
Or the cannabis ordinance could specifically prohibit and then leave the jurisdiction only with the mayor and council. So I'm looking at the ordinance that is before you, and that ordinance does talk about the identified marketplaces by way of the different type of classes. And I'm looking at the bottom line here, to establish cannabis retail pursuant to the section. So there is, again, the mayor and council are directing to you the ordinance that they are recommending, the buffers by way of within schools and public. So the ordinance is pretty specific, that's in front of you, of where it can be permitted and not permitted. You know, it's identified as ordinance of the Township of Sparta, permitting Class 5 cannabis business within the township, adding definitions to it, deleting certain subsections, and prohibiting uses and new sections. So the four corners of the ordinance before you are pretty specific.
Ken, another question. Can an HOA, and, you know, Lake Mohawk is obviously an HOA. Can an HOA, are we going to have to, can an HOA prohibit a cannabis store?
Well, if it's...
Or just do state rules trump that?
Well, the state rules are what control, and it's delegated to the mayor and council by way of ordinances. So if you do not want it in a certain area or have it permitted in some type of HOA, you could do that and specifically state it within the ordinance. You, the mayor and council, have a lot of power on this. It's just being
But the
reviewed here.
HOA, unfortunately, and sadly, what you're saying is that the HOA has no power to prohibit this from in their zone?
Well,
In the reservation, the Lake Mohawk Reservation, we cannot prohibit that?
I think
I
you
mean,
can, I think you can prohibit it. If you don't want it in
Okay.
that area, you say, the mayor and council, it's like any other land use, where you want to permit it and where you don't want to permit it.
But you're saying it's mayor and council, it doesn't have anything to do with Lake Mohawk's ability to,
It is mayor and council who issue the licenses. An HOA cannot, unless the HOA tried to buy a license and have it at their facility, and again, the four corners of the ordinance would control that. I've never seen an HOA have the wherewithal or ability to get a cannabis license.
No, I wasn't suggesting that the HOA get their own cannabis license. I was suggesting that Joe Cannabis wants to open a store in the White Deer Plaza, and he rents a space and puts his license there, and suddenly, Lake Mohawk has this undesirable, at least maybe in my opinion, undesirable pot shop right in the center of our economic area, our little downtown.
I don't,
Mark, your mayor and council and your locations, it says here, page 3, location, shall be committed as a conditional use only within the TCC and C1 zones in Sparta, and only at those locations with direct access to Route 15 or State Route 181. So that is pretty specific. If it doesn't fall in there, they can't get a license, and they could not apply for a use variance because they'd have to have the license to apply for a property that would have to be within the permitted area. So again, my experience is that you determine how many licenses are there and the zone, and then it falls into place. If there's no HOA within the TCC and C1 zones, then you have nothing to worry about.
well, Winona Parkway has direct access to, Route 81, Woodport Road, et cetera. Yeah, I know. So it's really up to the town council to define this. So this is really something I think that you need to take back to town council and work out there, because it's not something that the planning board can do. It just doesn't have really anything to do with consistency. Yeah, so,
I just want to say one thing. I misunderstood Mark before when he said $1 million. He meant ratables, right? Okay, sorry. I was talking sales.
Yes, I meant ratables, I meant tax revenue. The tax revenue per person would be, if we all smoked the state average, $2.80 per person.
Our vote is on whether this aligns with the master plan.
correct, yeah, so let's get back to this. So, does this align with the master plan? We've made some recommendations. One is that they look at need, that has to be determined. We re-examine the type of the buffer zone.
I have one other question then.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this would go to both Ken and to Lindsay. I've looked at probably far too much information than I needed to and couldn't find what I really wanted to. What is the average buffer zone for facilities like this that are proposed?
And Secaucus is 1,000 feet. We're most familiar.
Yeah, Northville is 1,000 feet.
I found that Jersey City is 200.
oh,
A little more congested, a little bit different, right?
Different neighborhood fabric.
Broken,
1,000
200
feet. Property line or door to door?
Normally, it's
Does it-
property line.
Does it really matter in Hoboken?
Normally
It's like
property line.
the same.
Yeah.
But again, even if it's 200 feet in Hoboken or Jersey City, it's 200 feet within specific zones.
So it's,
From property line.
And again, capping the amount of licenses that are permitted. So there's a practicality to it also.
Can I make one other point? If we are going to send it back, and it sounds like that may be where we'll go, but if it does get sent back, one of the discussions that we've been having for a while now. I look to Rob and Joan and everybody in terms of, when you look at Lake Mohawk Plaza, is that TCC or is that C1H? And I think we really need to be clear on what we're doing here, because if it is TCC, and I think that's where we suspect Lake Mohawk Plaza is, this would allow those type of stores to go into Lake Mohawk Plaza. So just want to get an affirmative statement from the town council that that's what they're intending to do, or not.
No, you got to remember, yes, and on page, good point, and on page 3, it talks about cannabis retailers. Cannabis retailers operate the business. It says permitted as a conditional use, and there will be a maximum of 2 cannabis retailers within Sparta. And then it says one shall be a retail license to a certified woman-owned, veteran-owned, and disadvantaged business and/or minority-owned. That was a requirement. So in your community, this ordinance is contemplating a maximum of 2 retail. That's page 3.
There's nothing about signage or display of products contemplated in here, right? That's
Signage says on page 3, signs shall be limited to one location in compliance with township code. Signage shall not promote consumption of any cannabis product. No loitering sign shall also be posted. So that's page 3 dealing with signage, but there could be more specific conditions on signage.
So, yeah, because in comparing, again, more established ordinances that, I know this town council has put certain ordinances through the ringer that weren't maybe as polarizing as this one. So. But as far as signage, I mean, just this example, following words shall be prohibited from appearing on any sign. And those words were cannabis, marijuana, pot, weed, and any commonly known nickname of cannabis.
I'm going to pull this back a little bit again.
All right, so
because
again,
this
town
is
council,
not-
fine, but, all right, so just design standards is, just curious if we can make recommendations on signage to maybe, no? All right.
It does say on page 4 that it would be, site plan approval would be required before you. There is no harm, in my opinion, in that you have concerns over the buffer, 1,000 feet, that you have concerns over the identified need, maybe a referendum, and also as to signage and other site plan review issues.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I bring it up and I'm pressing it is because that 250 feet, door to door seems minimal. And then,
Mohawk School property.
right, so, and
Just think that.
so if you combine that with my comments about kind of advertising and words, if I have to have those kind of conversations, because, they're right there front and center, it's fine, I will have that conversation, but I just want to make sure that consideration of those,
I have a quick question for Ken. So any of our recommendations there that we're going to be providing to the council, they're recommendations. Like, we don't get a say over whether or not we can push that through or whether or not they'll even consider them. I just want to, so all we're doing is just making high-level recommendations, right?
High-level recommendations, and my experience has been that those recommendations are respected by way of the mayor and council, especially the issue, as you said, with the 1,000 feet and the signage. Those are all very valid, and my experience is they'd be honored.
And Ken, if we could just do something just on the clarification on, do they view Lake Mohawk as C1H zone or TCC? Because that has been a point of discussion lately, both here and at the council.
I think that's a valid point to raise also.
I think the other point is it's a use that's not in our master plan. We're supposed to decide whether it conforms with our master plan. It's not a use that's permitted in our master plan as a conditional or a permitted use.
But wouldn't that just
We're putting the
stipulate that
cart
it's
before the
that,
horse.
as far as consistency review is concerned, it's just not consistent because it's not there? I mean, does that track?
That tracks.
Yeah, they can.
I mean, look, it tracks. I just don't want you to be misled that cannabis has so much history by way of, some people will swear by its health aspect of it. So in the master plan, does it talk about medical? Does it talk about, not that it's a hospital, but we have a lot of these evolving urgent cares that were in historical hospitals, but now, so they're, even though it's not expressly in there, valid point, and I think we reference, but it's just such a new emerging area. And if you want to say you'd rather address it by way of the master plan we're going through now, that's a valid statement you can make.
It's probably the best because if it's not in there and this goes through, it prevents us from putting it in there later because it's a done deal.
Well, it doesn't, the master plan review would be that, is it, if the mayor and council pass the ordinance as they have, and let's say they incorporated your comments, or they decided to table it, or to withhold it for a referendum, or to defer it to the master plan to see if you want to put it in there, those are all options you can do as part of your review. The ordinance is before you, you can accept it, reject it, or modify it. So I think you've discussed all the issues.
So it's basically the vote is whether we feel it's consistent with the master plan or not.
And if, because of the emerging area law it is, if you have, that it's difficult for it ever to meet the standard of consistency in the master plan, that it should be held off until the master plan review. That could be another option.
So Ken, you were referring to kind of medical use, therapeutic use for this product, and kind of using that as a way to justify, not justify, but kind of urgent care has been contemplated. So, and well-being. So we could look at it from that aspect. I guess I'd put it back at you and say, if you're conflating the medical and recreational in that argument, then should one of our recommendations be to bifurcate this ordinance into a purely medical use and a recreational use? Because right now it's all a single document, right? That doesn't make a distinction.
Yes, we're really getting into the weeds of, you'll see on page
Sorry.
1, no, that's good. There's good discussion, that there's different licenses on page 1. You know, the manufacturing license, the wholesale license, the distribution license, the retail license, the delivery license, that's on page 1 of the ordinance. So here, the ordinance is talking about permitting 2, on page 3, within certain, 2 retail within certain zones. And the discussion was, and what you've discussed, concerned over it not being specifically in the master plan, the identified need, signage, buffers, and the like, whether or not it's in the TCC zone, what limitations of zoning. Those are all very legitimate concerns that you could say we take offense to, or we take objection to the proposed ordinance as a result of these issues. You could take that. So if the mayor and council came back and addressed those issues, they would probably resend the ordinance to you. But that would be one avenue you could take.
And sorry, just because you got me looking back at the classes, but class 5 is a retailer, class 6 is delivery. But then on page 3, the language is retail, and it's retail business, so brick and mortar, but then cannabis delivery service licenses. So my recommendation there would be to be specific and say that you're going for a class 5 non-delivery. My reason for that is just my own expertise with some of this class is that delivery is extremely hard to regulate. So to Mark's points about, you know, how much we would get in ratables, what infrastructure costs that would be, I would have concerns if we did not strike cannabis delivery service from the licenses that we're putting forth under the section 23(1) cannabis retailer, I think that should just be brick and mortar only. But that's just me.
No, that's a very good point.
One last thing I see on the thing, it does say here that the town adopted by ordinance on June 22nd, 2021, the prohibiting cannabis businesses within the township. So was at that time memorialized, other than an ordinance, did you find anything in that,
It's in the code.
in the code?
If you look at prohibited uses, it's the third prohibited use. The first one is sexual businesses, and that's the one I referred to where it used a regional survey to determine non-need. The second is tattoo parlors, and the third is cannabis, I think related to opting out.
So that's, how could it be consistent with the master plan if it's in the code that it's prohibited?
I think we're good to go.
All good points.
I have one other question. When somebody's applying for a license at the state, is there a separate license for medical marijuana? Or are they combined where you could do recreational and medical in the same store?
I apologize. I don't know. I do know that it's a very strict procedure, and the mayor and council set forth the categories. If you did not want one of the 6 categories, the classes, you could specifically prohibit it. So again, a lot of power, local government, what they do or don't want.
Would we recommend that maybe they start with medical if they're going to pursue this?
They could. You could.
Yeah, and could we also recommend just calling out no consumption on premises?
It's already in there.
All right. I just didn't see it under the retail elsewhere. Okay.
No loitering too. No loitering.
Well, we have choices here. We could either send it up with no recommendation, saying we accept it, we reject it, but our third option is to say, these
Reasonable.
are our modifications, and at least that gives us a voice.
But we still have to make a decision, is it consistent with the master plan or not? And if it is, have with suggestions, or if it's not, with suggestions, such as
Well,
incorporated,
yeah, it
change
can't-
in the master plan.
It can't be because it's not in the master plan.
So
It is.
It's prohibited.
That's in an ordinance. But in the master plan, it's not consistent because it's not there.
Yeah, we're all saying kind of the same thing. Lindsay summarized in her memorandum the master plan goals and how it could, if you wanted, fit within those particular goals. I hear loud and clear the concern. So therefore, in 2002, the last amendment, cannabis wasn't around in any way, shape, or form. So to say that it's inconsistent with 2002, I think that's a disservice to the law. However, this is your community. If you have concerns about the cannabis, it's currently an ordinance that prohibits it, and you have concerns about what is before you, those should be stated, as you are stating. This is a good conversation, is my point. So as the chair had said, is it not consistent, however, with comments? Is it consistent based upon the prior goals with comments? That would be what you have to decide, or take no action.
Okay, how would you like to frame the motion?
No.
No, not on this, we can't, sorry. That's for
If-
town council.
If I would frame it, and someone could either say consistent with the master plan or not consistent, however, the issues identified by the planning board in the discussion, to go back to the mayor and council, is number one, the buffer measurements, that it would be a minimum of 1,000 feet from property line to property line, not door to door. Number two, that there be a region, some type of regional survey to identify needs. Could be by way of a referendum or some other method. Concerns over signage, concerns over the TCC zone, whether or not certain properties fall within or not. There was discussion on the HOA on that. There was also discussion on page 3 that you're talking about retail. However, does retail also encompass delivery? So there should be more specific language as to that. And also, there was some discussion that maybe we should start with medical usage before going to retail. That's what my notes reflect.
I had one other thing that I previously raised, and that is the definition of cannabis, which leads me to ask other questions. I looked at the state definition, and the Sparta definition incorporated the first half of the state definition and left off the other half, which related to hemp and that. I'd like to see that definition mirror the state. Is that something we can also recommend?
Yes.
Because it's unclear.
Yes, and it could be in deference to who drafted the first one, that the law has evolved and the definitions have been revised. So that's a good point, though.
Can we make any further recommendations then? If we're getting the definition of cannabis, then I assume you're talking about like extracts, tinctures, all the various products. Going along with the buffer, again, going along with health, safety, well-being, welfare of, say, the younger community. I wouldn't mind. I don't know. I guess we could ask for it, but think about edibles, gummy bears, things that are very attractive to juveniles. And maybe this is a more appropriate for town council, but if we limited, are we talking about, what product are we talking about for these retail sales? Are we talking about the flower? Are we talking about extracts? Are we talking about the consumable
All.
vape cartridges that are going to end up all over the street? So just
I guess to focus on that is again, the state regulations and what the retail licensing provide. So good comments. We could add that concerns of the younger community and what products are for sale. So that would be added along with the definition sections being clarified and updated, as the chairperson had noted.
But this sends a mixed message. It really does, right? Because you say no, but here we got all these suggestions. It's similar to last year when I sat in the planning board meetings in the audience, and all of a sudden somebody on the planning board says, "Well, let's pick the paint color." Okay, and so when we pick the paint color, we're approving, whatever the building was, whatever the variance was. And, I just don't want to send a mixed message in there. But I hear the rest of the planning board. I hear the rest of your comments, and, I think certainly going back to 1,000 feet and recommending that is very important. I mean, when Rob Leakley was speaking about having lounges, I'm thinking, the PNC Bank goes out, we have put in a cannabis store right there, overlooking the where the 6-year-olds play softball.
Mark,
Game is bad, you just walk across the street and pick something up.
Mark, to your point, I think maybe a simple way of doing this is we say yes, and with the following recommendations. And if we're a no, it's just a no.
Yeah.
So it's simple. So, and there are no recommendations if you're a no. How's that? I make
Sounds
that as
good.
my
Yeah, 'cause
motion to go for a vote.
Mark, we can't state whether we're really for or against marijuana here. We're just stating if there is going to be an ordinance, what input can we make into it?
Or if we feel it's not consistent,
Hmm.
we can state that and leave it at that. Correct? And if we feel it is consistent with the recommendations. Right? So those are our two ways to vote.
And you could, in all candor, you can say you don't find it consistent and that this issue would be revisited at the master plan coming up, if at all.
But then they wouldn't hear any of the recommendations that we've just discussed, and it would just go forward without our recommendations. And then we're back to square one.
Right, because ultimately the council can vote on it regardless
Yeah.
of what we say, right?
so
Whether
can
it's
they have
consistent or
I
not.
think our job as
Both
the board
sides.
is to give recommendations, and at the end of the day, the
Yeah.
council is gonna supersede us.
Yep.
Exactly,
So
because they're the
we're
ones who
trying to-
create the law.
We're trying to have an argument in here.
They're not superseding us. They're just, they can reject or take,
Yeah.
but this is our opportunity to feed into the.
Right, we have a
Exactly.
chance
So
to shape
I
it.
think we should have our
Shape it, yeah.
recommendations.
So they should have both the yes and no responses.
And we
no-
could
no
even
matter
say,
which way the vote
we
goes.
don't even want it in the TC zone, town center zone.
You could say that.
Do that too.
There's nothing
We
wrong with that.
recommend it.
So is
I
it,
actually think
recommend the
that with
economic
1,000
development
feet,
zone.
you're not even gonna be able to do it in town
Right.
center.
Yeah. I don't know if they've looked at the economic development zone.
But we did look at the master plan when they were here, and that 1,000 feet was basically nowhere in
Right.
Sparta.
But
So
then
once
there
you do
wasn't
that-
500, there wasn't 400, there wasn't 300.
And that's
there
why they
wasn't
went to
two-
the 250.
And 250 door to door.
so is it,
Doesn't work.
is it a motion and then is it feedback, two separate things? Or is
All
it?
right, so just as when you have a land use application before you, you can give comment as why you, let's say you denied an application because you were concerned with traffic, because you were, just felt it didn't fit this location, it didn't have A, B, C, D. That was the basis here for your denial. It is referred here, the ordinance for consistency. It's talking about uses of to retail within the TCC and C1 zone. We went through the issues of concern, again, buffers, identified need, signage, whether the TCC zone, HOA, retail versus delivery, medical usage as a startage, definition of cannabis, youth concerns, that you could say it is inconsistent because of those concerns, or you could say that you take no action, or again, you're just against it on the referral, whatever this board decides.
Well, how many would like to give comments back?
Well, I have one comment that I just found out, right? That because the club, HOA, Lake Mohawk, does not have direct access to 181 or Route 15,
But it does.
it couldn't happen. It couldn't happen. Well,
It
I
does.
guess it,
I think what they mean
I mean, if,
by direct access is
Well,
the
this
driveway.
is like a question, then it's not clear, because to me, Winona Parkway has direct access, going up past the Mexican place up to the school, that's direct access to 181. So,
Well, that could be part of the definition, that there has to be clarification. Where, there was
Right.
comment on the TCC zone on the HOA or not. So that issue is discussed and could be brought before the mayor and council.
Let me just, I know we're trying to end this, but just to tag on to that one thought a little bit more. You know, when I look at the master plan for Town Center, that has maps in it and that has designations. And that shows Lake Mohawk Plaza as C1H. There's now an ordinance out there that shows it as TCC. So I think there's an inconsistency there that I'd like to see clarified.
yeah.
Yes, I
That,
agree.
is like a separate subject, but I would like to have, work with Lindsay on developing a recommendation about bringing that C1H zone back, and maybe we can have that as something on the agenda for the April 2nd meeting, and really begin to clarify that.
Could it be a historic overlay?
That would be something different, but the C1H is still on the books,
Yeah.
and
in
it
the
would be
code.
simple to bring back and send that recommendation to town council as well.
And if the master plan was ever updated to show that change, that
Then,
might
mhm.
generate a different answer. But from what I could see, the last version of TCC master plan did not have that updated.
No, the 1999 version did not. What it did was expand the C1H zone. If you really look at it, it says we expand the C1H zone from Lake Mohawk to include additional properties, but it never took it away.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Plan.
the
Not the
version
master
back
plan.
then, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that was the latest.
Okay.
All right, so, I mean, I would make a motion to send it back that it's inconsistent because of our concerns and list our concerns.
I would agree.
So our concerns, and then the top one is it's not listed in the master plan.
Yeah,
And then
that's
here
the
the,
one.
okay.
It's not a
Contemplated use. It's not a contemplated.
contemplated use. It's not one that is either
Permitted
um,
or contemplated.
an allowed use or a conditional use.
But then that gets all of our comments as well as,
Mhm.
okay.
And then beyond that, we
Right.
have these other concerns.
Right.
Good.
Ken, can you put together a motion for us?
I can. I believe the discussion is that on the referral of the proposed cannabis ordinance to you, it's the finding of the board that it is not consistent with the Sparta Master Plan Consistency Review. As noted, it is not specifically contemplated the use, and the conditions and request here are beyond that which were contemplated in the 1984, 1997, 2000, and 2002 amendments to the Sparta Master Plan. The board would also like to bring to the attention of the mayor and council specific concerns as to the buffer requirement should be more akin with 1,000 feet from property line to property line. Also, there should be a more rigorous identification need, whether that be by referendum or some other method. There are concerns as to the zoning bulk requirements and site plan review by way of signage and other site plan issues. There is concern over the spectrum of the location of the two possible retail, defining of the TCC zone, whether or not Lake Mohawk and the HOA are within that or not, and also the language of the highway routes, whether or not Route 15 and 181 by way of direct access, if that could be better defined on what direct access is. There was also concern over the definition of retail, that retail would not also be delivery. Again, definition clarification. In addition, there was also definition clarification needed on cannabis itself. It seems that it does not follow the statutory legislative most recent language. Also concerns over our youth in the community and possible product limitations within any retail sale. And then finally, it may be worth looking at whether medical use should be a starting point before diving into straight retail use. Those are the comments I have.
Do you have a referendum in there as a
Yes,
suggestion?
I said identifying need by way of either referendum or some other method. Somebody would move it.
Okay,
We're ready for a roll call?
motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right, second.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call, please.
And to be
Oh.
clear, a yes vote is to say.
Say that it's inconsistent.
Inconsistent,
Consistent.
but making
Yeah,
these
and-
recommendations. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point. Make
Right.
sure we're all voting on the same thing. Okay.
Could you say that again? A yes vote is what?
They have found that the ordinance is inconsistent.
That it's inconsistent.
Inconsistent.
But making recommendations.
And what would a no vote be?
Just a plain old no.
No to what?
To our recommendations.
Yes, no to the recommendations, no to any action.
No to the inconsistency.
No to any action.
Yeah, we're overcomplicating this. It's if the vote before you, the yes vote is that it's not consistent. However, here are the concerns, so you're voicing the concern. A no vote is no, that it is not consistent, period, with no recommendation. That's my recommendation to you. Yes is inconsistent with suggestions. No is just no, it's inconsistent.
So Mark, do you want it to be inconsistent with, and give a lot of our recommendations?
I would think so.
Okay, then that will be your vote.
That would be a yes.
Are we
Roll
ready for a
call.
roll call?
Yeah.
Robert
let's go.
Blakely,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Reichstad,
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes, motion is carried.
And the record should reflect, there was a spirited discussion. There was very good comments. The minutes will reflect that, and the resolution will also reflect that. Thank you.
High level.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to just request we take a 5-minute break and then come back and hear, get busy with all the applicants. All right, thank you, everybody, for your patience with all of that. Now I'd like to welcome Paracella, PB number 25729, 65 Park Road.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to talk about the 80,000 square foot marijuana distribution wholesale center in Sparta. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel Bankendorf from the law firm of Askin and Hooker, representing the applicant this evening, Albert Paracella. Mr. Paracella, if you please stand up, approach. Yeah, I just want to swear you in so we get that done.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name and what town you live in.
Albert Paracella, Sparta Township.
Very good, thank you.
All right, also I have an expert here in the area of planning, Mr. Dunn, if you please stand.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Just state your name and professional address for the record.
Jason Dunn, Dunn, 11 Lawrence Road, Newton, New Jersey.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dunn, you have a working knowledge of the plans, is that correct?
Yes, I was involved in the culmination of the plan and the zoning analysis.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Poro, is it? Okay, hi, nice to meet you. I don't know that we've had a chance to meet yet. I just want to confirm that adequate service was provided, and we provided a correspondence on March 7th, 2025, with respect to
Yes,
same.
we did receive and rely upon the certification that was provided. Yes, it has been provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so again, we're here to discuss actually two properties. They're located on block 3045. It's lot 53, which is currently a 4.987 acre lot with a single-family dwelling, and lot 58, it's currently a 0.341 acre lot with a single-family dwelling and a detached garage. Both exist in the R3 residential zone. The purpose for this application is a minor subdivision and lot line adjustment. The goal is to take from the larger of the two lots 0.275 acres from lot 53 and to consolidate and adjust the lot lines of the subdivided portion of lot 58 to bring lot 58 closer to compliance at 0.59 acres. And the big benefit that the town sees from this is that currently lot 58 is actually over the impervious coverage calculation, and this actually brings it under the impervious coverage calculation. You'll hear more about that from our planner. But I think what we should do is start with Mr. Simmons's report. I think there were some items on there that we should quickly address. This is an application that doesn't need much testimony, but with respect to the testimony, Mr. Simmons's report is where we should begin. Mr. Simmons, if you would like to go through your report, and then Mr. Dunn and I can.
Is that all right with
That's
you,
fine,
Madam
yes.
Chair? Certainly. Just for the record, I'm referring to the report I prepared dated February 13th, 2025. And on page 1 of the report, as the applicant's attorney just mentioned, he basically described what's proposed here in the proposed subdivision to enlarge Lot 58 off of a piece of Lot 53. Going on to page 2, again, as he just mentioned, one of the big benefits will be the decrease in impervious coverage from 37.1% to 21.2%, bringing it below the limit of 25%. After the subdivision is completed, if approved by the board, I just point out that there still will be one C variance type situation. Side yard setback to the garage, 8-foot minimum is required, 5.9 feet exist and will still exist after it's done. This subdivision isn't affecting that, but it's an existing non-conforming condition. With regards to looking at Lot 58 after it's completed, if approved, I do notice that on adjacent Lot 57, there's a slight encroachment of existing pavement onto the easterly corner of Lot 58. That's an existing condition. It's not caused by this subdivision. And also, a portion of the existing wood fence on Lot 57 encroaches onto Lot 58 as well. Again, an existing condition. On page 3, item 3E, there's an existing utility pole guy wire that's located near the easterly corner. Applicant to determine if there is an existing easement for this guy wire. I noticed that when I was out there doing a site inspection. I think the applicant's attorney is going to bring up that he did locate an easement to from JCP&L for that existing guy wire, so he'll be producing that as part of the record, I
We
believe.
did. I believe we even provided it to Ms. Fox. If not, we will provide it.
Okay. And then item 3F, it appears that the existing water main in Park Road may come very close to encroaching over the northerly right-of-way line of Park Road near the paved parking area. Sparta Water Department should advise if they want an easement on Lot 58 in this area. I believe the board did receive a report from the Water Department that it was not necessary in this particular location. And the one valve that I did note, I believe was, they ascertained that it was the curb box for the subject property, not an inline gate valve. So the map should really be corrected to reflect that properly. And I point out in item 3G, tax lot 53, even after the subdivision is completed, will still conform because of its size to the R3 bulk requirements after the proposed subdivision. Then item number 4, looking at tax lot 53, again, taking .257 acres off of lot 53, annexing it to lot 58. As we indicated, the bulk requirements for lot 53 after the proposed subdivision will still be met. And then item C, 4C, the file map in the area of lot 53 should be checked to see if it reflects any of the following easements. Letter I, a site triangle easement at the intersection of Park Road and Woodlawn Road. I did talk to the applicant's attorney. I believe at this point in time, they have not been able to ascertain or find a site triangle easement at that intersection. But if one doesn't exist, I'd recommend that that be made a condition of any approval the board considers, just so it's taken care of. And double I, storm drainage easement for the existing discharge and head wall at the intersection of Park Road and Woodlawn Road. I did also receive some correspondence from the applicant's attorney where that drainage easement has in fact been conveyed. So it's on file in the Sussex County Clerk's office, and I'm sure they can put that on the subdivision map, the book and page, so that X years from now, when someone's checking this out, they'll know it exists and it'll be part of the record.
David, may I just make a comment on the site triangle easement? Thank you. The proposed condition to the resolution is that a site triangle easement should be dedicated. But can we modify that to say, because we haven't had a chance to analyze what that would be. We haven't talked with you about what standards that should be. Let's just say the sight lines are within the right of way. I don't know. Then if it's not necessary, can we say the resolution is as may be required or something like that?
I would say a minimum of a 90-foot by 90-foot site triangle easement.
90 by 90?
Minimum, yes.
And it's such an odd angle. I just don't want to.
I know, just so the board knows, when I was out there doing the site inspection, I didn't see any apparent site distance problems. But what I'm always concerned about, and I ran into one today, that's fine for these owners that are here now, but 2 or 3 owners down the road, somebody may say, geez, we'd love to have 10-foot high forsythia bushes right on the corner. And then if somebody has a problem with site distance, then try and get them to take it out.
I see.
So I would recommend that the site triangle easement be provided.
Thank you.
And
And
Board,
then,
the engineer had referenced the minimum of a 90-foot site triangle issue. Therefore, if we put that as a condition, a minimum of 90, if there does become an issue, the applicant could come back and say that they wanted more. But for the sake of clarity, I would recommend that we put the minimum 90 feet if you were to accept the application. Is that okay, counsel?
Well, yeah, I would ask that this application not be conditioned upon the site triangle easement. I respect Mr. Simmons' recommendation. Unfortunately, I have been unable to communicate with the attorney for the seller, and he's also directly advised me not to commit that property to anything. So I don't know if we're going to have the cooperation of the seller other than the fact that they're selling us a portion of their property. So I would ask that it not be a condition of approval, but I understand the board's prerogative. I understand Mr. Simmons' report. So just initially, if we could just hear the rest of the testimony, and then if the board says, listen, we're not doing this without this condition, then we'll talk more about it. But I would ask that it not be a condition of approval. I think the town is benefiting from this directly by decreasing the impervious coverage calculation pretty significantly, bringing the property into compliance. It's not even the property that we're getting, that's acquiring the section of the property. It's the property that's selling the piece off. So it's really not to their benefit, it's to my client's benefit. But we can talk more about that later. I'm just letting the board know where I stand right now.
I just respectfully, we're moving along very well. Public health, safety, and welfare. If this board approves something that creates a possible dangerous situation, that's something, and to go against the board engineer is something that I've never really seen in my career, but go ahead, we'll continue.
Well, Dave, are you done?
No, ma'am.
'Cause- Okay.
So then moving on, item number 5, county planning board approval is going to be required because it is a subdivision. It's not on a county road or affects a county bridge, but it's a subdivision. And then under miscellaneous, I did point out under item A, there are just a couple minor discrepancies between the various distances on the subdivision map versus the key map, which I'm sure Mr. Dunn's office can correct.
Yes, we took a look at them, and I would say in general, what the dimensions that are on the map, or what should be reflected in the chart, it looks like there's some rounding that was done that probably should not have been. So
Right,
we'll
I
correct
agree.
that.
Okay. And then the last comment I had, this is a question possibly for the board's, or excuse me, for the applicant's attorney. I did look at the overall key map of the subdivision, and the one thing I noticed was, and I wasn't sure if this was applicable, sometimes I've seen it in the Lake Mohawk Reservation where properties like that may be subject to certain restrictions. For example, maybe no building, no additional impervious coverage in that area. Not that the applicant is applying to do that, but I didn't know if they had had any kind of title search or searched it back to see if there were any restrictions that run with that big piece of Lot 53 and carving off a small portion of it to your applicant's property, if those restrictions would in fact attach to that.
Yeah, and we didn't find any.
Okay,
Restrictions.
and that concludes my report.
Did you ask the club engineer for Lake Mohawk?
We did make a request, but I don't know that we got a response from them. So any approval this evening would be conditioned upon review and approval by the Lake Mohawk Country Club, for sure.
And board, if there is a title issue there, it runs with the property. Your approval or denial would not change that. The resolution would reflect that if there is any title issues as to the right-of-way as identified by the engineer, they would remain in place. So if we could just to clarify, Council, except for the right-of-way easement issue, are the concerns as raised by the board engineer ones that you can satisfy?
Yes.
Great. The board want to hear from the planner or talk about the right-of-way?
Well, this is all kind of backwards, but why don't we hear from the planner? Which planner are we referring to?
That's a good point.
So I did speak with my planner.
Took this
and-
backwards on us.
Yeah, so if the right-of-way is required as a condition of approval, the applicant's okay with it, because we don't believe it's going to be of much impact to the application.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. My concern was it was going to take a big swath off the front of their property. They'd have to take down, I don't know, some kind of outbuilding or something, but looking at it now, it doesn't seem that way at all.
Why don't we go back then and hear your presentation, and then we'll go back. Comments.
There's really, for this particular application, I love to talk, but there's really not too much to say. We're basically asking for a piece of property that's amounts to a little more than a quarter acre, approximately 140 feet wide, the same width as the lot 58, and about 75 feet deep, because it's just not a perfect rectangle. The land kind of slopes severely downhill from the back of the owner's house. So he wishes to make his property bigger for perhaps use for his children, his young age children to play, and, you know, possibly resolve any impervious coverage issues. I think that's a big plus. And I know that the neighbor on lot 57 has done the same thing. I'm not sure when, but it's not uncommon for something like this in the lake to happen. The good news for me, there is only one existing non-conforming condition, and that is the setback to the garage. By way of planning, I think it's appropriate for the board to approve this, even with that non-conformance, because the garage is legally there, it's existing, and what we're proposing is not intensifying that non-conformity at all. That's about all I have to say. We're not asking for any physical improvements for this project. It's just a lot line adjustment at this point.
Okay, pass it off to Lindsay then.
Most of my comments were all addressed through Mr. Simmons' letter as well. Things I noted were already addressed, so.
Ken, do you have anything else, or should I go to the board?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
All right, anybody on the board have any comments? Start down with Jeanette.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Is there existing house on the other property?
The other property, meaning the larger property, lot
Yes.
53? Yes, there is a home.
And I would assume the remainder of all the property coming down behind all these other houses is unbuildable, right? It's just, you know, we really couldn't put anything down there. It's kind of,
Oh, yes, that is correct.
all right.
In the Lake Mohawk final map from 1928, I think it was, it left this large 4-acre piece because of the slope and
It's all a hill.
condition, right?
Yeah, it's important to note that the piece of property that's being sectioned off, actually, there are, I think at least 2 trees that had come down, one of which caused over $200,000 of damage to my client's property. And so it's really important to him to be able to acquire this piece of property to, you know, maintain it, essentially. And it's not, you know, so that's important to note there as well.
And as you said, it aligns with the next door neighbor's property who had been annexed as well. So I mean, we're talking basically the same stuff.
Yeah, it's slowly, yes, but surely, yeah.
That's it.
Brian?
I have no questions.
Ron?
No questions?
Rob?
No questions.
Other Rob?
So you're going to get LMCC approval. I'm just trying to figure out, and I don't have the old planning maps. I'm curious if this lot 53, it's essentially an LMCC club lot that's just being kind of sliced up.
It is a residential lot that's occupied by a single-family home.
Okay, so you're no, 50, not 58, 53. 53 has, so it's a residential LMCC lot.
On the plan, you'll notice there's a picture, an image.
Yep.
That's the image of the home that currently exists on lot 53.
Okay,
Which
all
is
right.
More or
So,
less near the intersection of Park Road and Woodlawn.
Yeah.
so it's not changing the status of the lot type.
No.
It's not, in fact, it's all taxed as a buildable lot, and you're just basically moving one section of the buildable lot to the neighbor. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was all I had. Thanks.
Celeste?
Nope, I'm all good.
I don't have anything either, so I guess we're ready for a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Wait.
Yes,
Wait, we didn't do the public.
yes,
Oh,
good point, yes.
Right, we have,
Good point.
Are there anybody from the public who would like to make a comment? Okay. and-
Just real quick, Mr. Dunn, your license is in good standing as of today?
Yes, it is, still current and good standing.
And can the owner stand one more time? So you've heard the testimony that was given by your attorney and your expert?
Yes,
Dunn, are you in accord with that testimony?
yes.
And as far as the conditions that were placed on the record through the board engineer's correspondence of February 13th, 2005, are you in accord with complying with those requirements?
Yes,
And you've been present during the entire presentation, correct?
that'd be correct, yeah.
And you understand what's going on here today?
Yes, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Before we just say, here's a motion, we have to do the motion with the conditions.
Yes.
So maybe, Ken, can you frame
Yeah,
that out?
yes, what I would do is you've had here today an application for a subdivision that is set forth in your board engineer and board planners report, as well as the supporting documentation from the applicant. More specifically, the board engineer's report of February 13th, 2025 goes through in detail the conditions and concerns, and I'm satisfied that we can reference that report in the testimony if you are so inclined to approve the subdivision. So the motion would be to approve the subdivision with related, it would be an existing variance would be in place as a result of the side yard setback in the garage. It's a requirement of 8 feet. It's providing 5.9. But again, all those conditions that were set forth and the board engineer's report would be a condition of approval, and that is also supported by the board engineer's, planner's findings. So a motion to approve would be approving the subdivision with the pre-existing conditions pursuant to the conditions of the board engineer's February 13th, 2025 analysis.
Just before we do that, in your report, did you reference the 90-foot site triangle, or did you just say site triangle?
That was just added verbally tonight,
So
but
I
I
think we need to
would
add
suggest that be incorporated as the minimum site triangle easement.
So noted.
Okay.
And the water main question?
It's noted in the,
Yeah, the rest
It'll
are
convey.
noted.
All right.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure about the official 90 degrees.
Yep.
Okay, so,
So I'll make a motion to approve based on what our attorney listed as conditions.
thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Okay, and a roll call.
Robert Blakely,
Yes.
Matt Burke. Yes. Ron Day,
Yes?
Celeste Luciano,
Yes.
Ernie Reichstad,
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. And Mark, I know you voted, but I'm sorry, I forgot that you were on the phone to ask if you had any other questions or concerns.
You're forgiven, John.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening.
And then next, I'd like to welcome back Ramez and Company, Planning Board number 713, location 61 Sparta Avenue.
Good evening. My name is Wade Baldwin, law firm Lavery Salvaggi Cohen. I look unfamiliar because I'm covering for Mike Salvaggi, but he's went over everything with me, and hopefully we can answer all your questions.
Okay.
Um,
Because we're going to have to get you,
For my store. Is it for Tranquil Leaf? 61 Sparta Ave.
no, Ramirez, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's my landlord.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I should be going up there or.
Oh, no, I guess for public comment.
not yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll have
It's
to
his
get you on
application whenever
record.
he wants.
Yeah, no, I guess, can I just talk to her real quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't know she was coming. Okay, so, as you know, we've been
We
here a
just
couple
get your
times.
name,
Yeah,
like
Wade
spelled-
Baldwin.
Like,
the
for the
WA
record, and just to spell it all out.
Yep. Wade, W-A-D-E.
Okay, say, I thought it was Wayne. That's why we're spelling it.
Yeah. Baldwin, B-A-L-D-W-I-N.
Okay, welcome.
All right, so here a couple times in the past. So from the last application, last time we were here, there's been discussions, among other things, about parking. We made some adjustments to the plan. It has been sent to the engineer. We received a report. A lot of the discussion around parking has been addressed by changing one of the uses from 2 restaurants to a restaurant and retail. And at this point, I would like to introduce a planner to kind of go over those changes and lay out how that's going to affect the application. So
Counsel, before we go there, just, I'm new to the board. Is this a carried application, or is this the hearing date?
this is
Or-
carried.
Carried, okay. And just for the record, and I apologize, the original hearing date, I can get that from Dory.
August 7th, 2024.
August,
Original hearing date,
August 2nd,
7,
7th, 2024.
correct. And there were multiple after that,
That was the original date, and that was the original notice.
correct.
And has there been any subsequent notices provided to the board?
Not to my knowledge.
So this matter has been carried consistently on your agenda?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Several reiterations.
Now, on the council, so you're saying there are less variances now, or is the latest plan, the amended plan? Why don't you go through the
So,
amended
so
plan and go
we
through
addressed
the,
some concerns, and John McDonough is the planner. He has not testified yet, so he, if you'd like to swear him in.
sure. Hi, John. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Name and spell your last name and professional address.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John McDonough. It's spelled MC, capital DONOUGH. My business address is 101 Gibraltar Drive. That's over in Parsippany. Took a while to get here tonight with what happened on Route 80. But yes, my license in professional planning is current. It's in good standing. I have a national certification through AICP as well. Current good standing, and I have the good fortune of getting to do this throughout the state on a nightly basis, and I've been here in your great community many times before.
The chairperson, I recommend that he be accepted in the area of professional planning.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Take it away?
Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, for counselor, I have those dates in front of me if it helps right off the
Please,
bat.
please, if you can. go
Hearing
ahead.
number 1, August 7th. We were case number 3. We didn't start till late, so we got only 1 hour. We got through the engineer, wherever he went, and we had to come back with some revisions. Number 2, September 18th, we did renotice. We submitted revised plans 10 days prior. I have here, we did not proceed because the revised plans did not make it in time to renotice. October 2nd, second hearing, we were here all night with the engineer. October 16th, the operator, the architect, and planning still to go. Planning was not reached that night. So the operator was here and the architect was here. So 3 hearings so far, August 7th, October 2nd, and October 16th. And here we are in March now.
Good.
So.
And if you could then, John, just from October 16th to tonight, March, if you could just bring us through what happened, what revisions. Thank you.
I will go through that from where we started. I'm going to defer some of the specifics and the particulars to our engineer, who will put up a board. But I just want to sort of take the board through where we've landed from a zoning standpoint. This is a relatively simple application from a pure zoning standpoint and how this application aligns with your zoning ordinance. The relief, relatively minor. There's about 4 or 5 variances, which are actually existing conditions. This is an adaptive reuse or a retrofit of an existing building. We're not enlarging the building, as you've heard, and really is going to focus on 1,400 square feet within the existing building in particular, asking the board to move on a food use or a restaurant use as opposed to a retail use, which is a permitted use in the zone, and based on the evolution of the plan, has parking proposed in conformance with what the parking requirement would be. So really, no relief related to the parking count per se. I know there was a comment in Mr. Simmons' report about some basement storage that would trigger parking relief. And I'll dive a little bit deeper into this, but back in 2017, there was actually a resolution, I believe before this board, where that very same condition was considered, and it was found that the basement could be occupied as storage for the pharmacy without triggering the need for additional parking relief. So as we know, variances run with the land. That condition is not changing as part of the application, so it's our position that the use of that basement space does not trigger any additional parking demand. The conversion of this 1,400 square feet from retail to a restaurant-type use would trigger a parking demand of 29 spaces on site. And as we get to the plan, you'll see we now have a parking proposed of 29 spaces. So the process is supposed to be interactive. That's exactly what this has been, so compliments to the board for all of your feedback. Compliments to the applicant as well for a plan that has evolved to the point where, again, 29 spaces are required, 29 spaces are proposed. Plus, we now have an agreement with the adjacent property, which is also owned by the applicant, to utilize those parking spaces as well and cross-access. That site has a surplus of 4 parking spaces, so there's actually additional spaces available under the calculation of your ordinance on that particular site. I do, Madam Chair, have some photographs just to give the board a little context, a little color on what I just explained, and that'll help give everybody an orientation, which I'm sure by now you know, but I think it'll help Counselor and maybe some of the newer members here as well as to what we're looking at. This is going to be a file size 11 by 17 exhibit, and it's about, I think it's 5 pages in total.
You'll have to mark it, correct?
Yes, and I don't
Correct.
know
I
where
don't
we
know where
are.
we're
I
at.
could mark it A1 with today's date if you prefer, or.
Yes, A1 for today's date works.
While you're doing that, I just want to make a note that normally we, as I mentioned in the beginning, we stop the testimony at 9:30 and we continue with the rest of our stuff. However, since we reversed everything, I'm not going to cut you off at 9:30. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't think I'll be particularly long-winded because the relief that I'm not doing, obviously, use variance or heavier variances here. So I'll make my points and then I'll hear the board. And it looks like everybody on the board except your professionals.
Get one?
Yes, that's a good idea.
Did I give you extra? So again, A1 with today's date, 3/19/2025. Again, it's a is a 5-page exhibit. It is going to be drone photographs of the subject property that were actually taken some time ago, back in August, but I would offer that they are a fair and accurate representation of the property as it exists today for the purpose of my analysis here, probably with the sole exception that we were in full leaf at that time and we're just starting to get the leaves to emerge now.
Do you know
the
what time of day it was?
That's what I was going to ask.
What day of the week was that?
What day of the week and time?
Time of day and,
Okay,
Yeah.
time of day, he is usually out there, and I'm trying to look at the angles of the sun, the shadows. He's usually out there around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so this is mid-afternoon, and August 6th, I think we can check what day of the week that was. I know it was a weekday, I don't. Today is Wednesday, it was probably,
Tuesday.
it was a Tuesday, okay, so there you go.
Everybody was unsure.
So, again, this was really intended just to give a little orientation here, was intended to show the physical characteristic of the land and the surrounding land use context. So really looking at this from a physical planning standpoint. As you know, it's a single tax lot, block 5019, lot number 1, which is about a half acre. It's 24,611 square feet. It is a corner lot. That road you see in the foreground is 517. The road you see off to the right is Route 181, or Sparta Ave. The surrounding land use context is commercial, but there are residential uses, including on the adjacent lot. That would be, the subject lot is the one that's in the foreground in this photograph, looking towards the downtown. And then the adjacent building, which as we've talked about, is also owned by the same applicant. And now we have the cross agreements between the two properties. That does have a residential component associated within it, which was factored into the parking calculation. Frame number 2 is a view, and so that first view was looking to the south. Frame number 2, we're now spinning around, looking to the east. And I should point out, the use of the building as it exists now, I'm sure you all well know, the corner unit is now the Sparta Pharmacy. And then there are 2 caps, I'll call them, end cap units that flank the pharmacy, that are the 2 subject units before the board. They're both vacant retail space right now. The one that you see on page number 1 is proposed to be retail space, that is the space rather that is proposed to be a restaurant space. And I'll get into the numbers of that in a moment. It's about 1,400 square feet in total, that floor area. Spinning around in frame number 2, we're looking to the east. Now you can see in the corner is where the pharmacy would be. To the left of the building is where the restaurant unit would be. And then on the right portion of the building is where the retail reuse would be. And then to the right of that, you can see that adjacent building, which is actually a mixed-use building with, I believe, 2 dwelling units inside and then commercial space below. Frame number 3 is now spinning with a view looking to the north. Again, a commercial area. You can see the restaurant in the background. I can tell you my eye doctor's right there across the way, so it is a commercialized area. And frame number 4 is a view looking to the west, again, giving a sense of the commercialized nature of the area. And then finally, the last view is a top-down view. There's been numerous discussions along the way about that area in the back of the subject property where all those vehicles were going. And I think we cleared that up the first or the second hearing, that they will be going away as part of the application. And the new plan that you see, that you will see before you, actually cuts that area off, and there's parking that's going to be in the back that contributes to the 29 spaces on site. So with that backdrop, we're looking at a tenant fit up for 1 restaurant in one of the vacant units and another retail use in the other vacant unit, with that 3rd unit being the Sparta Pharmacy. And just to break down, the pharmacy is 1,678 square feet. The retail component is 1,100 square feet. And then the restaurant is 1,400 square feet. I think that's going to be our real focus when I dive into the parking breakdown. But just from a zoning standpoint, we're in your TCC zone, your town center commercial district. We know the zone permits a wide variety of uses. It encourages activity. It is the town center. and other uses, including public, institutional, and residential. All the proposed uses are permitted in the zone, and the revised plans do indicate the parking count complies. Just to break down the parking requirement, actually, before I jump into the parking, there's a series of C variances, which are all existing conditions. Relief for the rear yard setback of 55.1 feet, where 60 feet would be required, is an existing condition that's not changing. The side yard setback, 5.3 feet, where 10 feet is the minimum that's required, again, an existing condition. C relief for the building height, 35.5 feet, where 35 feet would be the maximum that's allowed. I saw in Mr. Simmons' report a note that there were no records of how that 35.5 feet were permitted. It's an existing condition, to the extent I have to put on planning proofs for that to validate what has been a longstanding part of the community. I certainly can do that as well. C relief for the lot coverage, which I believe we've landed with a slight uptick based on the parking reconfiguration. My notes say 71.7%, where 40% would be the maximum allowed. That was where we started. I have to go back and look at what we're actually asking the board to move on, but it is a slight uptick over that 71.7% that we were originally asking for. And I just want to double check the plans here. I have relief for the parking configuration, the tandem parking for 3 spaces, which would be for employee parking only. In terms of the actual parking breakdown, just to walk you through the 3 categories of use here. The pharmacy would be treated as a retail use, which has a parking requirement of 1 space for 200 square feet at 1,678 square feet divided by 200. And I believe Mr. Simmons has this in his report. Equates to 8.39 spaces, or we'll round that up to a parking requirement of 9 spaces for the pharmacy. Then the retail unit, 1,100 square feet divided by 200, lands at 5.5, which is 6 parking spaces. So we've got 15 between the 2 retail components being required. Now, the restaurant space is again at 1,400 square feet. If this were fit up with a pure retail use, you would divide that by 200. The parking requirement would be 7 spaces. With the food use, we look at it based on the number of seats. There are 16 seats proposed here. We would divide it by 3, would come out with a parking requirement of 5.3 spaces, actually less. But you also have another method of calculating your food uses, which is based on the dining area, excluding the cooking area, excluding the storage area. And there we're looking at 700 square feet divided by 50 square feet, or 1 per 50, would come out to 14 spots. So if we add up the 9 for the pharmacy, the 6 for the retail, and the 14 for the restaurant, that comes out to a parking demand of 29 spaces. The plan has been restriped to provide for parking spaces. Importantly, we started at 19 spaces here, so again, through the positive movement and the back and forth, we've landed at a good spot where there are 29 spaces on here to meet the actual or the ordinance demand. I'm not counting the storage space based on that 2017 ordinance resolution of approval. I can read that into the record. And then, of course, there's the shared agreement with the adjacent property, which has a surplus of 4 parking spaces in terms of the requirement there. So I'll say there's some wiggle room from a parking standpoint above and beyond the ordinance requirement if we do that breakdown. I believe under current conditions, there are 22 spaces out there. So we've upped the parking supply on site to 29. That's an increase of 7. If you hone in on the 1,400 square foot space that we're really talking about here in terms of conversion from retail to restaurant use, under retail use, that would equate to 7 spaces. On the restaurant use, it's 14 spaces. So if we hone in only on that 1,400 square feet, there's a delta of 7 spaces that are triggered by going with restaurant as opposed to retail. And the applicant has made up those 7 spaces with the reconfiguration going from 22 to 29 spaces here. Bottom line, applicant is not asking the board to move on any parking count or any off-street parking supply requirement under your ordinance. So the relief that we've landed with are for those setbacks, the building height, the lot coverage, and the parking configuration being tandem for those 3 spaces. I'm going to run them under the familiar flexible C balancing test, whereby the benefits of the application as a whole would substantially outweigh the detriments. We could certainly look to a certain extent under the C1 standard as this being a hardship related to the land, but I think the stronger basis for proof here is under that C2 balancing. This case called the Pullen case, Pullen, which says, look at the application as a whole when you consider the positives. And I have 4 or 5 purposes of zoning in the municipal land use law at NJSA 40:55D-2 that are being advanced here, including Purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare by delivering permitted uses that serve the public with food choices at a small scale. I'm thinking something like a pizzeria, Chinese takeout. You just had the bagel shop down the street. I was involved with that one. And some sort of specialty market is something I think our operator talked about. Either a halal type food or Portuguese food, I think were some of the things that were mentioned by our operator. Purpose G, the project promotes the planning goal to provide for a variety of uses according to the needs of all New Jersey citizens by creating opportunity for and access to a diversity of food choices. I like the nexus between this location, the ball fields down the road. This is a good opportunity, I think, for your excellent walkability here. A nice nexus with that as well in terms of grab-and-go type food choices that would relate to that athletic amenity that you have. Purpose I, the project promotes a desirable visual environment because it retains what's there. This is certainly, suffice it to say, a visually prominent corner in your community. Having inactivity here, in my view, does not enhance the image and the identity of the community. To put something that does have some vibrancy here will certainly be uplifting in terms of the image and the identity of the community. So I think that does go towards Purpose I, the promotion of a desirable visual environment. It's a beautiful building, so kudos to this board again that vetted this when it was originally in, and we're looking to maintain its continued viability and efficacy. And I think filling it with a viable use would be a good thing here from a planning standpoint, not to mention permitted uses. Purpose M, the project promotes the planning goal for efficient use of land because it is adaptive reuse of existing commercial space with minimal, if any, substantial site modifications or external work. Again, a retrofit. From a planning standpoint, adaptive reuse is as efficient as it gets. It avoids the disruptions of construction, again, at a busy corner in your community. Keeping what's there, reusing what's there is better than a wholesale knockdown and a reconstruction to try to find something better. There certainly could be impacts associated with construction. Those are the benefits of the project as a whole. Taking it back to the potential impacts associated with the relief the applicant is seeking. Again, with the revised plan, I think we've landed at a good spot. The relief that the applicant is seeking is minor, mostly related to existing conditions that are a longstanding part of the local landscape and familiar in the public eye. The relief related to the building height I have here was an existing condition, but to the extent it was never formally authorized, I don't know how it happened, but it did. It's a foot over the ordinance allowance. It's a C variance, not a D variance. It is a peaked roof, so we're not looking at a full massing with that additional half foot. And we always look at the purposes of height control as they're articulated in the Grasso case. I see none of the Grasso purposes of height control being violated here. That additional half foot is not going to block any scenic views, is not going to create any negative shadow effects on adjacent lands. It is certainly not going to create an obtrusive, imposing structure in the landscape. and will certainly not create a population density that exceeds the carrying capacity of the land. So for those reasons, I think that additional half foot is something that the board can move favorably on in validating what's already there. Relief related to the parking tandem. The tandem parking is reasonable. It pertains to only 3 spaces. It's for employees only. Again, all the relief related to the placement of the building is something that has been well established. And by virtue of the extremely small scale of the restaurant, I think there's a reasonable probability that the parking impact will be no greater than filling the space with a popular brand name retail store, a medical office use, an institutional use, or a dance studio, all of which are permitted in the zone district. So good planning is about balancing. We plan the best we can, but there could certainly be unintended consequences with something else here. What's nice about this application is it has been vetted. It takes the unknown out of the equation. I think there's enough here for the board to put a good, I'll say, rope around the application to control the uses, and the site design has been finalized here by our engineer. In conclusion, I believe the statutory test is met. The application is simply to fill vacant space with beneficial small-scale service-type uses. Again, the criteria are met, and from a planning standpoint, I believe where we've landed is that approval is warranted. Madam Chair, that's all I have on direct.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. I'd like to turn to our professionals to ask their questions. Dave, would you like to start?
Sure, Madam Chair. I'll refer back to the report I prepared dated March 14th, 2025, on the latest submission that came from the applicant. A lot of what the applicant's planner just discussed addressed many of those points in that report, but I'll highlight a few if I may. Going over to page 2 of the report, I agree with what he characterized as the existing non-conforming situations that require variance, existing conditions. The one that is existing but was increased slightly in the back of the property next to that easement in the back, there was a few hundred square feet of additional impervious added that created, I believe, the additional rise in impervious coverage for that area in order to obtain the 29 spaces that they show on their overall lot. So that is an increase right there, I believe. With regards to the site plan, I just wanted to point out that in previous testimony, I believe the applicant indicated that he also owns the property lot 26. And I did an analysis that, or checked the analysis that they did, and based on my calculations, overall, there's a total of 17 parking spaces required for lot 26, and that left in excess of 4 spaces available if there was a cross easement between the property that we're talking about tonight versus the adjacent property on lot 26. So because of some things I'll bring out next, what I'd suggest is that it may be appropriate, if the board wants to act favorably on this, to request that the applicant that the applicant does enter into an agreement with himself or his other entity, if you will, to make sure those 4 spaces are available. I'm concerned, and I might as well get into it now, with some of the spaces in the far rear around space 29 and what have you. Quite frankly, while they show them from a planometric standpoint pulling in, they're very steep in the back. They're very steep. And as we talked about in earlier hearings on this, that on some of those, if they park the way they've got them delineated on the site plan, if you pulled into those spaces and in fact you opened up the driver's car door to get out, you're slamming your door into your neighbor. And when I've gone by this area over the past few months, when I've been in the area, I purposely look just to see how the parking is or isn't being used back there. And several times I saw where parking was not pulled in like it's shown on the plan, and in fact was pulled facing down the hill nose to tail. Probably because of the steepness of that area, it's just easier. So for that reason, I think there may be some reluctance even on employee parking, especially in the wintertime when it's icy in the parking lot and what have you. They might want to instead opt for those 4 parking spaces on lot 26. And when they talk about setting up a cross easement between the parking lot on lot 26, my gut reaction is I think they should dedicate specific spots that the patrons or the employees on the subject property could use. Because I know on the northerly side of the existing building on Lot 26, for example, there's existing spaces that there's signage out there reserved for the tenant in the first floor. And I don't have too much doubt that if somebody parked in some of those spaces, the owner of the business on the first floor would be coming out and saying, I'm sorry, but you have to move. Those are for my patrons or clients or whatever. So I think that would be a good thing to suggest to get built into any approval the board may consider. Then as I go through the rest of the report, I had talked about how there was an aisle width deficiency in certain areas, so there'd be waivers for that. Then we talked about handicap parking signage. I know they had a couple handicap spots designated, but I don't know, and I haven't been out there to double check it in the real world if they actually put all the ADA required signage up. So just to make sure that, I'm not saying it's not there, but just as a condition to make sure that is taken care of. With regards to lighting, again, I don't recall, and I'd stand corrected if I missed it, that the hours of operation for the lighting weren't shown on the plan. And also verification that the lighting intensity meets the township's ordinance based on any changes that they're proposing for the facade lighting, gooseneck lighting, or whatever, to make sure it's adequately covered. There is water from the township water system for the building, and again, subject to verification. I believe the architect was here at one time and indicated that the building was not subject to sprinklers. Now, with the restaurant use, I don't know if they've got some contained chemical-type hood system to suppress any cooking situation. Perhaps they could address that as well. The sanitary sewer, the one thing that I would see going from a retail store type situation to a restaurant, again, it would be my understanding the township water and sewer department, as well as the county health department, would probably want a grease trap of some description put in the sewer line to avoid negatively impacting the sewer line and sewer laterals. With regards to the storm drainage, just two things. Number one, since the plan had been more refined since one of our earlier hearings, they have shown that they're less than 500 square feet additional impervious going in. It was 440 some odd square feet. So that's below the 500 square foot threshold where they'd have to provide additional mitigation. But I believe one of the original conditions for the area in the back that we were always talking about by the loading dock, I haven't seen any plans on it yet, but my assumption is there's some dry wells under there because it's in a very low area. And they were to evaluate the capacity of those dry wells and also their structural integrity to take all that loading. That would still have to be done. There are a few construction details that I listed that I'm sure the applicant can provide. And then finally, on the last couple of pages, I went through the analysis before I received additional information from Mr. Salvaggi's office. I went through the analysis for the basement because that did total up, just using the figures for the pharmacy, the proposed restaurant, and the proposed retail unit, of about 4,178 square feet. And depending on whether that was used for retail office in the basement or for storage, you came up between another 21 or 9 parking spaces, depending on which category you utilize for that. And that was above and beyond the 29 spaces that they're providing. Now, I don't think the planner got into the testimony on that resolution yet. I'm pretty sure he can respond to it. But I believe when he indicated there was a resolution from 2017. 2017?
Is this microphone pick me up or you need me to?
It should.
Okay. Yes, so there is a resolution from 2017 and I highlighted the language. This is on page 3. of the resolution from 2017, and this is the whereas number 4. The board also and I'm reading from the resolution. The board also finds that a site plan exemption or C2 variance should be granted to allow the conversion of 344 square feet of basement storage for the pharmacy's employees only, break room and bathroom without any additional parking spaces because no additional employees or businesses will be generated. So I think that's what we were falling back on with respect to the storage.
So I don't believe in the architectural plans, and I stand corrected on this one, that we received any as-built plan of the basement to show, and I'm not saying it isn't, but that 300 and some odd square feet of break room area and exactly what is being used for the basement area other than storage. The reason I bring that up, there was some discussion here, I believe at a previous hearing, that there might have been some training classes down there or something to that effect. So it's not clear in my mind exactly what's going on down there, especially based on going by several times, and there's quite a few cars parked in the area in the back. Not saying you're wrong, but
Right, it's a good point. I think that's a stipulation, a condition of approval to.
Yeah, we would stipulate any use that was granted pursuant to this resolution would be continued and would be expanded, beyond what has already been granted as the variance. As I was just advised, there is also a representation from the attorney. of the
Could you speak
pharmacy.
into the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, there was correspondence from the attorney of the pharmacy, basically confirming that there has been no change to the use of the basement since the resolution was approved, and we could forward that correspondence to the board.
Yes, I appreciate that. As the board engineer has suggested and is standard and customary in the industry, the as-built plan is something that makes people a little more comfortable rather than a self-serving letter, and respectfully, a letter from an attorney as to a statement that is made to the attorney, and he memorializes in writing. So the suggestion of the board engineer of the as-built is one that I would echo also, but I think we can continue the testimony.
Yeah, we can get that.
then moving on to signage. Again, I don't believe details of any of the new sign plates to add to that freestanding sign have been added to the plans. I understand it's function of if you get approval here at this board. And I believe in the resolution that the planner referenced, there was also a request that was granted to raise the freestanding sign to about 14 and a half feet in there to accommodate visibility and also the additional sign plates.
On the prior resolution, yes.
Okay. Under fire protection, we touch base on that, just verify with the architect and the construction official department if in fact any fire protection would be required, especially additional water usage for the restaurant type use. There was no formal EIS submitted for this application. It's an existing building. But again, I just had to note to check on any noise level that might be generated at the property lines. There's a note for the architect to take into consideration the design. They'd have to meet Sparta Township and New Jersey DEP noise limits. Under 14, we listed all the various approvals that would be required if the board were to approve the application. And then finally, under item 15, under miscellaneous, jumping down to item B, we talked about, as the board's attorney just mentioned, the as-built plan. And under item A, I did note 4 conditions that I read off the previous resolution back in 2013 that should be verified to make sure it was taken care of. Condition number 4 was about the dry wells and the overflow area. Condition number 5, verifying the site lighting for the parking lot to make sure it's all in conformance. Condition number 8, provide a copy of the merger deed for the lots involved with the application. And I will note that Mr. Salvaggi did send over a copy of that deed with some of the other information to our office, and I assume it came to the board as well. And condition number 10 was the impervious coverage calculations which I believe have been updated to reflect the property lines and also the additional impervious coverage to get those additional areas in the back added in. And that's my updated report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir, ma'am.
So I apologize if any of this is being repeated from previous meetings. I'm new here. So I just have a couple of questions regarding the retail use. It says deli. I would advise the board, if they were to look favorably upon this application, to maybe restrict having any type of tables or anything like that for it to be then considered a restaurant use, because that kind of seems like that's a fine line that could easily be crossed. My next issue is when looking at the criteria, right, we consider the what will benefit the community. We think about public good. We think about health, safety, welfare, which we've said quite a bit tonight. One of my concerns is the 2 egress stairs in the rear, which just come out of the building right into the parking area. Parking space 22 is directly adjacent to both of those. I feel like those could be potentially unsafe situations for people exiting the building. And in addition to that, I know Mr. Simmons also brought up that change in grade in the rear of the building for 29 and 28. As it's already been stated, there's that big grade change where I think that does create a bit of a blind spot for those vehicles backing out. And I'm not entirely sure that they would work as parking spaces.
Lindsay, I'm sorry, what spaces did you have concerned on?
So 28 and 29,
Okay,
and then 22.
okay, thank you.
And I also would bring to the board's attention that space 20 is going, if a car is parked there, it'll be blocking the meter to the building and the utilities.
Lindsay, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Pardon?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, so parking spot 20 is right in front of the meters, which are on the exterior of the building. You actually can see them better in these drone images. Page 3, you can kind of see the striping and where the exterior meters are. And the white car that's parked there, if it was parked in the lines, would be blocking the exterior meters. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
So, good comments. I think I can take them in reverse. I think the main one, which is a good one, the blocking of the side doors.
Into the microphone, please.
I think the comments were all good. I'll take them, I think, in reverse order. That's probably easier for me to remember. The first was those 3 parking spaces adjacent to the building on the side. I'm seeing them as shown on the approved site plan from 2014. I'm also seeing them on the exhibits that I've given you. So they're there, they've been vetted, so.
All right, so with all due respect, a prior use parking site plan on tandem parking that is creating a current public health, safety, and welfare issue, it's my legal advice that that's not grandfathered. It may be a basis to grant a variance on the tandem, but it is in no way, shape, or form grandfathered. So if you can address the concerns of tandem parking there, and the other concern I have is it looks like the sight line, I'm trying to see on the survey, is part of the parking space on the other lot?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll let you go with that. Go ahead.
Now, I think I can
And I'm not trying to be difficult. I was always taught that if, God forbid, an accident occurs and we approve something, that two wrongs don't make a right, just because it was permitted in the past doesn't, if there is a safety issue or the meter and you have justification in the testimony, that's great. But I think but go ahead, it's your application.
Certainly going to yield for engineer if
Yes.
stated, my name's not on these plans. But one potential solution is certainly pull those spaces a little bit away from the side of the building with a cross-hatched area that starts to pinch the drive aisle. I don't know how low we can go to be adequate for safe circulation, because we do have the conversions of the spaces on the other building starting to come into play here as well.
Do you know where you're going to put the other 4 spaces on the other lot? Do you know that yet?
Well, this is gonna go back to Mr. Simmons' comment about those spaces 23 through 28 along the back of the property.
Okay.
He had some concern about the slopes and the feasibility or the usability of those spaces. I know we talked about them being employee spaces, so they're not going to have that high turnover. If that's still a problem, that's certainly something I think our engineer can address. The point is, there are a surplus of 4 spaces on the adjacent lot 57, I have to remember the lot number 26.
Right.
There's a surplus of 4, so there could be 4 designated employee-only spaces for the subject site. And I always say maybe that helps the subject site breathe a little more, takes out some of those difficult parking spaces. That's my knee-jerk reaction, but I'm certainly going to yield to the person who's signing the plan that's feasible. 4 spaces could be lost on the subject, and I think based on that shared agreement, would still comply with the ordinance.
Or you take the 4 spaces in the back, you enlarge and, rather than have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces in the back, you have 3 spaces, 4 spaces, something. Respectfully, I think there's good comments. We're getting close to 10 o'clock, that if and I would say to the board, in my experience, it's great to condition applications on things like, does the dry well work, signage of certain things, the ADA. And I appreciate, I did get from council the merger deed. I'll take a look at that. I do have pause in my experience when you have and respectfully to the engineer, when you put 1 and then you put 8, I know common sense says this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm more used to the third grader approach that shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's no confusion on where the spaces are. And I would say that with the concerns that the engineer brought up on the back and where exactly the 4 spaces are going to be on lot 26, I think the board could make an informed decision if they had that data. And I don't think that should be a heavy lift. I would also like to see the agreement between the 2 properties that, and I can review that very quickly, as to what that, it will be a form of an easement or something that would be a license agreement, that if the restaurant fails, that parking arrangement would also fail. So that would be up to the property owner what conditions they want to put on. But I think it's fair to this board that the parking is an issue that they've talked about, and I've seen that if you had a more specific just parking plan, I think that would be my recommendation, chairperson, that to carry it, to have that.
Yes, I'd like to bring up one other point. I have a ton of questions, which I'm going to save to the end after everybody. But there is one thing that I think really needs to be addressed with regard to the parking, so that we're all on the same page going forward. You had one of your tenants come into the minor site plan subcommittee in November of 2024. And there was a site plan that was submitted at that time. And on this site plan, with regard to those 3 parallel parking spaces, it says 3 illegal parallel parking spaces to be abandoned. So They were illegal to begin with.
What is that in relation to? I,
Tranquil Leaf.
okay. But the site plan, what
Well,
application?
like
The
I said,
site
Madam Chair,
plan-
I was just looking at the stamped 2014 approval, and it shows those 3 spaces, so I wasn't part of that TRC, so I don't even know what that document is.
You can't read it. I had to do it with my magnifier phone. But it says 3 illegal parallel parking spaces to be abandoned. And to address your resolution that you brought up, first of all, you are stating that the pharmacy is leasing the basement area, correct?
I don't know that.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that would be part of a gross leasable space, correct?
Correct. I mean, I would need to
Correct,
look into it.
okay.
I'm covering for Mike Salvaggi, but
Yes, okay,
Yes.
so it's, and the parking standards relate to gross leasable space. The resolution that you brought up was for the break room, and it said that additional parking is not needed for the 342 square feet, but it did not indicate what the parking was. It just said not additional for the 342 square feet, but you have other square footage there that needs to be addressed, needs to be on a site plan. It is part of your gross leasable space. So we need to see the whole picture, and as Mr. Simmons was saying, that could equate to 21 more spaces, even if you want to carve out the 342 square feet from a prior variance, you could do that, but it still relates to more. So, those are my concerns. I think you need to address the parallel parking, not only the safety concerns, but the fact that it was acknowledged that they were illegal spaces. Just because you slap some paint on doesn't really make it a legal space, and to put all of it on your site plan. Then at that point, if we want to go back and say, okay, now we know what we're going to maybe give a variance about, but it all needs to be laid out. So we're missing all the rest of the square footage in there. It is gross leasable space. Am I correct?
Counsel, what I'll do is I'll get you a copy, what the chairperson has given us. It does say 3 existing, it uses the word illegal.
Yeah.
Parking spaces to be abandoned. I think it's abandoned is the word. But we'll get a copy of that to you, so at least we can.
Is that in any official document? Is that something?
It's submitted by the property owner. It says site plan layout, signed by Joseph Golden, PEPP. It says preliminary and final plan, gives the lot and block, and it looks like 2013.
We'll get to the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the bottom of it in terms of what's going on in that basement as well.
Yep.
We'll pin that down.
Great. Thank you.
We want to get it right.
Just FYI, because every time I go back there, I have tons of pictures on my phone. And so the last time, I went there March 12th, they're parked 3 deep. There were 21 cars in the back. So their pharmacy, we had asked at one point for the number of employees by the tenant. We never got that, but 21 cars. They could take up all your parking spaces. So where are they going to go? I think, all of this needs to come up. I'm going to hold off the rest of my questions. I just wanted to address this so we know exactly what we're looking at as we go through questions.
That's good. The basement, the number of employees in the pharmacy, the tandem parking space.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll take a look at that site plan.
Yes.
Okay.
It may help also that I've driven by the site also. There may be some abandoned cars on the site that off the back. It's not endearing when you.
I think that's in the applicant's self-interest too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just also, before we begin with the rest of the board asking questions, Mr. Simmons, I don't think you really addressed the easement and the distance between how narrow it gets.
Madam Chair, it's a good point. In the report that I did March 14th, 2025, on page 3 under parking and loading, I did bring up certain areas where when I was out there, again, referring to I call them dedicated spaces on the northerly side of the building on lot 26. As you progress down the easement, the corridor becomes narrower and narrower based on the geometric configuration of some of the parking spaces, and it gets below, based on my scaling, it gets below the minimum requirement of 24 feet. So there's some waivers in there. The other thing,
But that's just for parking. What about the fact that the easement will have to allow access for moving trucks or whatever else may go to the property behind it?
that was the next place I was going to go, since I'm hearing the application's going to be carried. Excuse me, I would think that it would be a good thing for the applicant and his consultants to provide a copy of that easement and their opinion on what those easement rights are, or to the contrary, what rights these property owners may have to be in that easement, if it's just for ingress and egress, or if they're allowed to infringe upon that easement with some of their parking. And I'm going back to what the chair lady just mentioned about those illegal parking spaces. I know that was signed by Joseph Golden, PE, and my recollection is that Joe Golden and his firm did the original site plan for this site. So you may find some information on that there.
And just for the, we can draft something for your review, and of course, we can discuss, because I think you mentioned maybe designating spots, so that can kind of be a back and forth on what spots get designated if we go that route.
And my other suggestion on those 4 spots, if you're looking at lot 26, I'm assuming that you might be focused primarily on the parking lot in the rear of that building. And I would think, just off the top of my head, that the 4 spots should probably be closer to the subject property you're dealing with, so minimize the traffic going in and out around the residential parking in the back.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, do we want to start with questions from the board? Still have some time to maybe get some.
My only concern is obviously the parking, and a parking plan would be essential, I think, in order to move forward.
So I will pass it on.
Maybe it makes sense for us to address all these issues and then.
Well, let's see what else may come up. Ron, I think you have some questions.
Yeah, so if I can.
Get these on the record and then we'll.
So one thing, if we can talk about it at the next time, was, again, Corporal Morris's report. I'd like to get some type of response from you on whether you agree, disagree, and, you know, is there an expert that can testify to that? That'd be helpful to hear your point of view.
That's the police officer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I guess Dave already maybe touched on this, it was the additional square footage in the basement. You know, there is square footage, but it needs parking spaces or not, but is that going to trigger a need for a fire suppressant system based on the square footage when that's added? Talked about the impervious coverage. Talked about those spaces. Design standards for the TCC says both side yard parking and rear yard parking should be no closer than 5 feet to the building. When I look at both buildings, I don't see that in a couple of spots. And I don't see variances either being granted previously or being requested. So I'd like to make sure that that's addressed. In particular.
Can you say that again?
So when you look at TCC, the ordinance state that no parking spaces shall be closer than 5 feet to the building. So if you look at the side ones we talked about, as well as in the other building, behind, you pull right up to the building, and there's no stops or anything like that. So that's a safety issue I think needs to be addressed. Let's see. Dave talked about the slope. Talked about the basement. This, looking at the drawings, I didn't see a size for the loading space, so I don't know if that was compliant or not. It wasn't marked on the drawing. Just want to make sure that that's compliant. As well as our engineer has said, you know, there's safety issues here associated with the slope of that. I know when I drove by the other day, there was cars all parked in that area. So I just want to make sure it's really going to be a loading area, no parking, and that the slope is something that we can consider safe. We talked about the aisles. Give me 1 second, I apologize. talk with you. So looking at the other building, and we talked about parking spaces. So it looks like the other building has a basement as well. And that's shown on your drawings. So do we need to be looking at square footage for that when consideration for parking? You know, what's, if there is a basement as it shows on the drawing, what's it being used for? And is it included in your parking calculations? Residential parking on the other building. So I don't know the answer. I'm going to look for you to help me with this. When you have tenants in a commercial building, do you need to reserve spaces just for the tenants? And if so, how many? And if so, does that still leave you a balance of spaces?
The answer is yes, it still leaves a balance of spaces. The RSIS, Residential Site Improvement Standards, is what governs. It's 2 spaces for every unit. There's 2 units there. I think Mr. Simmons.
But are they marked reserved? So they're always available if the tenant pulls up?
There's no requirement that they be reserved, but that, I think that's certainly something the applicant.
Would you
can
consider
take
that?
under advisement, for sure.
Okay, thanks. Talk to the basement. Also on the other building, when you're pulling, you can actually see it on the photographs you did, that you provided today. The physical therapist has signs all along the side of the building that says parking for physical therapy only. So I thought they were going to be removed, but they're still there. I think that, you know, if you're going to reserve them, then can we include them as part of the count, or is the sign going to come down? What's the plan there? Now looking at the other building, spaces 16 and 21, they're directly adjacent to a garden, a playground in the back. You come right up to it, and I don't see any safety means of a car accidentally pulling into that playground area. So I need to understand what's the plan there? And we talked about the 5 foot. Talked about the cars. And then what came up today from our planner, I believe was on the pharmacy building, there's 2 spaces, I believe it was 28 and 29. And the question was, you know, can they be considered spaces or not? Because they're in the count. So please take a look at that and be prepared to respond to that the next time you come back. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
No, I think Ron covered it all.
Rob?
So
Oh, Mark. Sorry, Mark. Mark?
Yes, thank you.
I'm so sorry. Do you have questions? I don't want to forget them again.
No, it's not really a question, but, you know, I'm very concerned about Officer Morris's discussion of the ingress and egress. I mean, these spots are very tight on here, and I know coming out of that lot, it's quite challenging to make a left turn. And I don't understand how, if you can have a restaurant, fast food, pickup, whatever, traffic going in and out, how the corner here is going to operate, how the intersection would operate. So that's my concern at this point. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Sorry.
yeah, kind of hop on Mark's comment, and then I would just add to it that I think you're talking about a takeout style restaurant and a deli, and then there's the pharmacy. So we're talking about a lot of cars in and out.
Before you go too far on the deli, I'm told that was a mistake on the plans.
Okay.
So the deli was a remnant from earlier. It's not a deli. There's not going to be any space. It's going to be a store, a shop. It's not going to be a food use.
Okay. And then just the space in between the buildings where there were those illegal spots. I guess the engineer, I'm curious, our engineer, what the thoughts were on, I think you had suggested, we could move those spaces away from the building, but I think that would just exacerbate, I think it's pretty narrow already, right? All right.
Yes.
So that's not an option. So we need to address those spaces, they probably need to be abandoned. Well, anyway, all right, that's it for me.
Got it. Maybe those are the 3 spaces that go. We'll see.
One last thing, I know we're beating dead horses regarding parking. Because we're looking at a cross easement, there's no safe walkable path from one side to the other. Maybe consider some striping.
Walk?
Yeah,
Perfect.
for walkability from those spaces for the easement purposes. Also, to reiterate, the Corporal Morris's report, I think the focus should be, as Councilman Scott indicated, that left turn out of the parking lot. Because that is difficult because you've got 2 lanes on that one side. I mean, the other driveways further down don't have that same difficulty that you do there, because if you have the one car sitting to make a left turn in, if somebody goes to make a left turn out and somebody's going around them, that's an issue. So I think that should be a point of focus when you're thinking about how to address Corporal Morris's report. Those were the only comments that I had. Thank you.
Okay, I had some of my questions were answered here, but I had one other regarding if it's not deli style and it says new retail, what is it going to be? Is it going to be the Tranquil Leaf that came into the minor site plan subcommittee?
I don't know an end user. All I know is that it's going to be a permitted use. That's a retail use, not a restaurant use.
Okay, but somebody will answer that question in further testimony.
If there's one that's contemplated, yes, we'll answer it. If there isn't a contemplated tenant at this point, we'll testify as to what it's going to be.
Do we have time to find that out from the owner? Do that?
We're not opening to the public yet. You-
Well,
you-
we
you
will
brought
open,
that-
we have to open it to the public before we go, right?
Why?
For them to ask questions? Of the
You're
applicant?
you're carrying the application. You haven't,
Yeah, but they're here.
if you'd like, you have the ability to have the public speak. You have that ability.
Okay, and so we would do that before I ask of the owner.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. So I guess that's it for the board questions, and I'd like to open it to the public. You're not public. Let me just make sure there's nobody from the public who wants to speak.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Just name and town you live in.
Jenny Derricks, Tappan, Sparta. I just want to, I don't have a copy of the pictures that you've been referring to with an updated plan. Is the easement issue that you're talking about, is that the easement that comes from the top that I brought up at the last meeting? Okay, and so are there spaces still across the back? And if so, how did they rectify having, right, but you already, this is my question at the last meeting. How does that easement get factored in? And that would explain then the references to 3 illegal spots, because the easement goes right through the slots. But if that's the same thing I asked last time, so thank you.
Thank
Counsel,
you.
you understand that issue?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we ask you the question then? Can you get sworn in?
He's sworn in from, yeah.
Okay.
Well, just
For the-
solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Your name and business address if you like.
It's Wasim Nader. Ask me for my name, right?
Yes.
It's Wasim Nader. I don't know if this is on or not.
I'd be dead.
Doesn't sound like you.
You might want to use the other.
3 others over
Yeah.
here, so take your pick. One of them works.
Green light is on. I guess two questions that come to mind. The first one is if you would allow Mr. Simmons to discuss outside of the board confinement in here, some of the issues that he has raised or the board has raised. I think that would make it a whole lot easier for us to either meet in person or meet on site and go over some of these comments and come back with a resolution to you guys. Last time, we were advised that we cannot meet with them or we cannot discuss any part of the application outside of the board.
Right, we'd like to keep all of this in the open forum, so,
Understood,
is the
but there's
way
a
it
lot
should
of
be.
technical issues that are going on in here, especially with the comments that he has raised. And, you know, beneficiary of him going through it, thank you, I was gonna do it, but you did an excellent job, so I appreciate it. But certainly that would be very helpful, so we can, again, resolve some of these technical issues. And then he could come back to you with more of a resolution, or I can come back to you with a resolution on it.
Well, Mr. Nader, I'm new to the board, new to the town. I drove to the site, to be candid. It has a lot of challenges by way of, I was surprised the way the rear of the property is kept. The distinction of some of even the one lot versus the children play area butting right up to the commercial lot. I was really confused on the prior approvals, the existing approval. Again, the site layout of the parking, over my 30 years, that's an issue that could be deemed the application incomplete, because the parking, I think the board has been pretty candid. If you come back with the parking layout and the traffic issue of the police, I think that would bode well. The issues of the dry well, to meet with the engineer, I'm comfortable with saying to the board those can be conditions, but I think the parking and the conditions of prior approvals on the site, I don't think you need to meet with the engineer. We need to see what you're going to do.
Well, I appreciate it. This has never happened. I guess in my 40 years of practicing engineering, this has never happened, and I've never had the ability to meet with the engineer. But I respect the board's decision, so that's fine. We'll move on from that. The comment that was made by the planner about I think you said the meter was adjacent to the parking space. What is the issue with it being adjacent? I guess you didn't elaborate on the issue for it. It's been that way since the building was constructed. It was approved that way. The parking is shown at the plans that were approved at the time. So what is the issue that you have or a concern that you have about that?
All right, I'm going to direct her not to answer that because it's common sense. It's public health, safety, and welfare. You don't put a parking space next to a meter. You're an engineer. You understand that. The concerns were here, the discussion of setting it back over. So even in the plans, the tandem parking spaces are showing on the other property. So I don't think this is rocket science. The board has said to you, here's their concern, here's the layout concern. The burden is on you to come forward with an acceptable plan. Again, in my 34 years, the plan would have been deemed incomplete because
with all
we're
due
trying
respect,
to, if
again,
you're permitted use, let's try to be on a positive aspect.
I'm doing my best to be on the positive aspect,
Okay.
but with understanding of what we have to do. I think leaving here every night and after every meeting with not a clear understanding of what the board wishes us to have leaves us coming back again and again and again to the board and yet leaving again with more comments. So the idea is that if we can understand what the board is exactly looking for or the professionals are looking for, then we can address those conditions and come back to the board with a meaningful plan. We feel that our plan addresses all the concerns related to the zoning and related to the site plan. However, we're open-minded. We can make adjustments as needed if we have the ability to do so. But just keep going back and modify the plan, submit, modify, submit, it doesn't do anybody any good.
I think the message is loud and clear on the parking layout is confusing and needs to be addressed, especially as the chairman brought up on the prior approval that talked about, and I don't know why they called it illegal, but that was the category that the engineer called it. So I think the parking layout, the message is pretty clear.
I've never seen that plan, so I don't know where that plan is. But if you have the
We'll
ability
make
to
sure you
show us
get a
that
copy
plan, would be
through
great.
your attorney. We'll make sure, yes.
Also, we have raised questions. We've given you a lot of questions to go back and, find answers to. And you've come back many times with changes to the application. So it's not one-sided, it is two-sided. First, it was going to be 2 restaurants, then it was going to be something else, and then it was going to be another thing. So, we've had to look at it each time differently based on what was submitted.
Madam Chairperson, we've come back based on the conditions that you guys have given us, or on the feedback that you have given us.
Right,
think the
because
last
we're trying to
meeting we
work
had-
with you to make this application suitable. But, you know, when we recommended that 2 restaurants for this site with the parking issues, et cetera, and the traffic concerns and the health, safety, and welfare of everyone concerned, we encouraged you to go back and look at it and specifically said, well, maybe it shouldn't be a restaurant over in that corner there with all of the traffic circulation even with on the site. So we've been asking you to make some of those improvements. I mean, we could have easily just said, okay,
You
doesn't
can,
work, but we're
absolutely,
trying
you
to
can, yeah.
work with you to go back and
But I
forth.
believe
So
we did. We removed one of the 2 restaurants. We eliminated one based on the feedback we received from you, and then we came back with one. And a
Right,
retail
that's
on the
why
other
this is a, you know, back and forth, but it's not like we're trying to make you keep coming back. We're trying to help you develop the application to a point where it might be acceptable.
And I would recommend to the board too, on the shared spaces, it could be a license agreement rather than a formal easement, because let's say the restaurant fails, God forbid. If you have an easement, it runs with the 2 properties. If you have a license agreement and the restaurant fails, then that license agreement could void and not encumber the other property, because you may get a new use that doesn't require the other spaces. So there's avenues that you could have, the board could work with you, but I really think the parking layout and the traffic flow is the key issue.
Yeah, I'm new here, so I haven't been part of the iterative process, and I'm just saying, I would echo the same thing. Just, could you just clarify the parking, and address the traffic engineer's comments?
There is
Please,
no
please,
traffic engineer,
please,
with all due
please.
respect.
Please.
He's a police officer.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know what his qualifications are, but with regard to traffic, I know he's the
Well,
traffic officer. Is that
he's
the
a
case?
local expert. He's a
He's
traffic
local expert. Okay,
It-
all right.
We're
engineer.
not asking you to come in with a traffic expert either, so
No.
if you
No, I
could just
understand.
address his
Yeah.
concerns.
Okay.
Okay? So when do we carry this?
So our next meeting is April 2nd. I don't know if that's too soon for the applicant. April 16th, we have up in the air. The next meeting would be May 7th.
And then, so May 7th?
Let's carry to May 7th.
7th.
No new notice will be required. Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you. All right, so at this point, we are going to open to the public for anything that has not been on the agenda. Okay, hearing none. And there was actually, Ken, before you came in, we had gone over the master plan subcommittee report, but you were going to
Yes.
add some things about that.
Yes,
So-
real quick. It is not homework. It is just a blurb from the New Jersey statutes dealing with the master plan. I want to give a couple copies coming down.
One down at Dory.
Okay, we'll go this way. Four. Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind. 2, you guys. And all I did was, this is the black letter law dealing with the master plan. And it talks about the planning board may, at the bottom, prepare and after public hearing, adopt and amend the master plan. But more importantly, if you turn to the second page, 739, it talks about the land use elements at the top. It starts, the master plan generally comprise reports or statements and land and development proposals with maps presenting at least the following elements and the objectives there. You know, we're talking about physical, economic, and social development of your community. You know your community best, and that is I admire people who are on the master plan. It's a lot of work, but you're really setting forth the direction of the community. There is, it says here, there's a land use element. And it talks about also the relationships. It goes through all the different points. Again, I'm skipping down, floodplains, air safety, other elements, economic sustainability. And then it also includes down below future build-outs because of flooding and hurricanes. You know, it just gives some really good language. If you go to 740, the next page, and it talks about, this is the circulation plan, number 4. I think there was some issue on transportation. So here, number 3 was the housing plan, which is self-evident. That's all the Fair Housing Co. issues, and that's Lindsay and her team will work on that. But number 4, the circulation plan showing the location types of facility and for all modes of transportation, talking about your roadways, talking about rail, water. I mean, that's a big issue in your community, especially as I understand with Route 15 and the like. So that is part of your task when you're looking at the master plan, how to develop your community soundly with sound transportation. Number 5, utilities. Number 6, community facilities, you know, libraries, hospitals, recreation fields, number 7. A conservation plan, you know, number 8. Economic development, obviously, you have to keep taxes in check, and this is in line with what we talked about cannabis, that if cannabis was part of the mayor and council's plan, that it generates X dollars. I know it's public record in Rochelle on Route 17 in Bergen County. They have a facility there, and the municipality's public records show that they've made $900,000 a year on the cannabis issues in Rochelle Park. So that community has permitted that type of use based upon part of their economic plan. And, you know, I may be off on the exact numbers, but it is public record that they have, that's part of their economic development. Number 10, historic preservation. We talked about what, you know, encouraging preservation of historic buildings. Let's say you have an older building that in order to keep that integrity, that footprint, they may need certain variances. So if that's important, that we would encourage historic preservation, even if it has to give way to certain bulk variances. And then, you know, number 12, recycling plan, 13, farm preservation. These are all elements. It goes through, again, the next page, and I'm skipping education again, greenhouse, green buildings. You know, do you have on a commercial building, number 16, do you have some type of greenhouse facilities, solar panels, or something that absorbs the heat? 17, public access plans. You know, when we're talking about down the shore, the public trust doctrine, that people can get to the ocean, people can get to the same thing here at the lakes. Public access, people should be able to get to the lakes and the walkways and not be barred as a result of certain restrictions. Again, it has to be reasonable. And then it talks about also dealing with other aspects of the master plan. By way of the state, intervene solid waste. So you can see these are just kind of the black letter topics of, it's so broad, you have so much power that it's your vested interest to determine what best suits your community. And you can see this checklist hits almost every aspect of your societal needs. That's it. Thank you.
You know what I don't see in here, though, is the climate change. That's a required aspect, isn't it?
Yeah, climate is in here by way of environmental, let's see, I did see something. 16, okay, good. Yeah, greenhouse environmental sustainability, yes.
Okay.
16. Climate conditions, right in 16, good catch.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it.
All right. Anybody else? Your motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second. In favor? Aye.
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 Mark, thank you for tuning in on the phone.